Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another week of Growing with My Fellow Growers. I'm your host, Jack Greenstock, joined as always by an amazing panelist, at least this week. So far, I've got Spartan Grown. I think we're just going to be doing some chat Q&A, but I'm going to pass it over first to Spartan Grown for his introduction.
Thanks, Jack. I am Spartan Grown. You can find me on Instagram at Spartan Grown, all one word, no spaces, nothing after the N in Spartan Grown. And or if you want to just shoot me an email, you can shoot me an email at spartangrown@gmail.com or russ@gmlarmy.com. I can help you with all of your growing needs or lighting needs, LED lighting needs, with either one of those email addresses. Thank you.
Happy to have you back, and it looks like it is just the two of us so far this evening. I'm not sure if we'll have any other panelists jumping in or not, but it is a time to remind anybody who's with us right now to click on over to live chat if you want to see all the messages. And if you have any questions, to tag at Cheap Home Grow, at Jack Greenstock, or at Spartan Grown on YouTube so we can see your questions and get them copied over into our Zoom chat. And with just the two of us, I think that'll be pretty interactive tonight. So hopefully we'll get to say hello to like Anova, XYZ Vector, Dog Doctor, Hoss Farms, Smart Poker, Wheezin the Juice in it to oh wait no in to intuitive wit. Okay, I was not intuitively reading that.
Ooh, yeah, I was trying to figure it out in my head too. Congrats to Wheezing the Juice again last night, won the light on GML show. Awesome to see that.
Always cool to see crossover across the shows and getting to recognize some of these names. And I'm gonna go ahead and just write into the chat to drop your questions and tag us. Probably not the best audio, having me clicking in the background, but boom, you could hear that's official. That went live. This is a real live show. We are live on YouTube for anybody who listens afterwards on the podcast platforms, whichever one that may be. I think Spotify, followed by Apple Podcasts, are our biggest. But yeah, I'm always here for the live show. We're here on YouTube, which if you do want to watch us live, you can find us on Cheap Home Grow YouTube channel. And that is where the majority of our content is posted. Well, all of it is posted initially. So right now, me and Spartan Grown holding it down, getting the chat rolling in here. We got Crispy Wannabe as well as Smart Poker. My mic was a little bit low there because I was just having it sit on my computer as I was doing stuff in the background. But yeah, it looks like we've got a pretty good chunk of the community already rolling in. And we
Awesome
nerd
to see.
DWC, good people.
I want to shout out XYZ Vector asking me in chat, do I have any really cool seeds? Well, I really hope I do. I've got I got a bunch saved up and thrown in I keep my seeds in a little mini refrigerator in my basement. So cool dark place. It fits all those bills for me. There's a bunch of seeds down there, and there's a bunch that I think are cool, but I mean, cool is subjective. So I don't know. I don't know if it's cool to you, but definitely a bunch of cool seeds to me. I've got the second drawer right here full of a bunch of different seeds that I've recently had different people send me. So I keep them in there, then they make their way downstairs. So I have a bunch. I've been blessed by a bunch of different people in the community with a bunch of cool different seeds. I just recently got some from a grower in Ohio, and it was a cross of Space Queen or Space Dude because it was the male in the cross, and I think it was Strawberry Diesel. I was like, oh, I am so super interested in that. So that was the new one that I was really excited for. And then the other most recent one is the one I just popped, and I've got four going right now in my flower, or not my flower, in my bedroom, and that's the Newberry by DJ Short. But I mean, I could probably speak for a while on just all the seeds I have.
That's fun, man. I think it's always fun to talk on seeds. I should probably just pull out my collection here and start rolling through some of them. I've seen, I think it was your buddy Baked Pone, probably on a few different shows, but on
Oh yeah, he's got a
over on
great
our
collection.
buddies at the Michigan Bros Grow Show, I've seen him a couple times start pulling out his seeds and going through that collection. I'm like, gosh, darn! Like he's got. If you're trying to ask me what breeders to get, go look at any show where he's pulled out his seed collection because I'm like 80 or 90% of them. I'm like, oh, I would get that same exact selection if I had the money sitting around and I was like, oh, I want some more seeds. I was like that for a while. I would just like whenever I had some spare cash, I'm like, I'm gonna buy some cool seeds. Whenever I had some spare cash, I'm
Yeah,
gonna buy
he
some
was
cool
serious
seeds.
about it. He made his own webpage just so that he could track all the different breeders that he liked and which ones he didn't like, and the seed banks which were legit to him or not legit, and tracking discount codes. And he was really into it, and he still keeps an eye on it. But yeah, he had a problem for a while, as you can see by his seed collection.
We all go through a phase, I think, and it's funny because it just depends on how much disposable income you have and like how passionate you are and things like that. But I think we all get to a point where we're like, wait, I have, let's say, 1,000 seeds or whatever it is, and you're like, I only have X amount of square feet to grow them. Like, how many runs is that going to take for me if I pop a
Yeah,
dozen a run or 100 a run, like whatever it is? And you're like, holy shit, I'm going to be growing for the next 40 years and not run out of seeds or something like that. And you're like, maybe I should stop buying them for a little bit and start popping the ones that I do have.
that's my story right there, dude. You said it to a T. And I'm excited to be teamed up with them on the Trichome Forest so we can run through more genetics that way. So that's going to be fun to pop all of these genetics and see what we find.
That's part of the beauty is it's like they don't really go bad quickly. You could pop them from a decade ago, and usually they'll get running. I've seen 40-year-old
Ah,
seeds popped. Sometimes they don't
yeah, I had
sprout.
those newberry seeds, and I was like, man, these are getting pretty old. And I popped them, and they pop like a normal seed. No leg to them at all. They jump right out of the shells, man.
I feel a little bad as you're the only one here, but I did just have to cut down my second Project V. I was, it I could have like rescued it, but it had another unintentional drought stress just from being busy with life and work and things like that. And I thought I was, avoiding overwatering and just like letting it go a little bit longer. And it came back and it was kind of on that like drooping, like where you could rescue it. But like at this
Yeah.
point, the whole entire plant had gone like pretty much purple stemmed, and I was picking off like a bunch of the dead leaf and stuff like that. It was just tortured and tortured and tortured. And I'm like, I'll start fresh. You know, I need to just repop and do this again. Like somebody else has already harvested some bud from the same seed batch that I sprouted. So they shouldn't still be in veg and like struggling in a 1 gallon pot. So if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it right. And I usually find, even though like you can have some good bud come from struggling grows, if I just put my, ball cap on and go out and play hard and do what I'm supposed to do, when I crush it, it's like that's the jar that I'm grabbing for all the time, and I'm excited to smoke it. And if I would have like pushed that run through, it would be something that would sit in the back of the curador and probably not get smoked for another like
Yeah.
6 months. And I pull it out here and there and be like, oh yeah, maybe it's kind of good,
Well,
but
I always have
it's
that
not.
same thing in my head too. Is like I can't judge if this is a good strain or not a good strain because I didn't do a good job growing it. You know what I mean? Well, not that I didn't do a good job, but I messed up on it. And so even if it was fairly good or on the border of good, I would be like, no, I got to grow it again and grow it, right and see if it comes out good. So you're still gonna have to grow it again. So it's still wasted time, in my opinion, to not do what you're doing. So I think you're doing the right move.
And this one I'll actually grow again because I know the genetics, I know the lineage, and I'm excited for it. Like I know Subcool and you're like even just F2ing it, um, it's not like you picked away, you open pollinated it, but even if you were picking, like there's only so much picking you're gonna do in one generation to from F1 to F2. So like that's why I think a lot of people are like, you shouldn't just F2 and release seeds of somebody who puts stuff out at F1 because it's sort of like a slap in the face. It's like a not quite reproduction, but close enough that enough people are going to buy it or, get it if it's offered at a lower price or more available, things like that. And that's how businesses are going to operate. But for the most part, I think people want that F1 from the original. Like if I'm getting Newberry, I want it from DJ Short. I don't want,
Yeah,
I hate to say it, if you F2'd it and then put out seeds, I wouldn't be like, I want Spartan Grown's F2 Newberry. Like I want the Newberry from DJ Short if I was going for Newberry or some blueberry from his staple and his sort of collection. So that's where I would go for it. And I think it's also important what you said. If I didn't knock it out of the park or didn't even just like get a good grow under my belt, not to necessarily hold that against the strain. In one case, you actually talked me out of regrowing one called More Cowbell because like I didn't do the best, but that being said, I had other strains in the exact same. Like I was doing a test run, so I had some stuff as small as 1 gallon pots of soil, but like one of them right next to it, Strawberry Daiquiri, which was also in a 1 gallon pot of soil, like yielded more and better quality. And I had like other ones in larger pots that did even better, which kind of taught me in that experiment at least, like you can only go so small if you're gonna finish in soil, unless you want like a single cola type nug or like maybe two or three,
for sure.
branches.
Yeah.
So I think that you need like a something like a city picker or a earth box or something that has like a decent soil volume if you want to expect to have similar yields and quality production to what you're going to get in like a smaller pot. Like what I could grow in 1 gallon of cocoa is like 1 to 3 ounces of bud off of a tiny little plant in cocoa. What I could grow in soil in a 1 gallon pot is like, you know, anywhere from like a half an ounce to, maybe 21 grams or something like that. Like I'm not getting a full ounce off of it.
I often say that the difference to me is that if you put a plant in cocoa in a 1 gallon pot, you're gonna get yields that rival soil grows in a 5 gallon pot.
That's almost exactly what my experience was. I tried like 3 gallons, 5 gallons, and then I ended up saying, fuck it, I'm just gonna go with the, sub-irrigated planter, which in my case, the earth box just happened to perfectly fit my exact tent space. Like I have a city picker outside for my plumeria, and it has been crushing it for the last 2 years. So I love both systems. I think they both are essentially the same thing. You've got a plastic tub with a grid on the bottom that separates the water layer from the soil layer, and you've got a little tube that goes down to the bottom that you can easily look down, see if it's empty, and then refill it. And then you just do your work in the top soil section and just kind of re-amend that. And even though I think that I'm at the point now that I have no living plants, I'm going to pull all my soil out of my earth box and dump it because I think enough of the stuff has gotten through. I didn't put down like I've seen Smiley Gardens and others in the past, like put down like a brown paper bag or something like that'll basically compost eventually through time on the basically on top of that grid. Because if you don't, like fine soil, when you're pouring that bag of soil into the earth box of the city picker, it's going to fall through like those basically, I don't know, maybe quarter size, half dollar sized little notches that are in the bottom. And it's not the end of the world, but I think that the closer you have to like a clean basin on the bottom and like not a bunch of soil. Like at this point, I would imagine there's probably roots and dead mass and all sorts of shit. Like I haven't gotten down into the bottom of my earth box for literally 3 years since I started just growing in and re-amending it over and over and over again. Other than like occasionally if I transplant and cut deep enough, I can see like the plastic on the bottom as I'm transplanting the next root ball in. But even then it's like, you know, there's not like these big open holes anymore. It's like covered in dirt and there's stuff that's fallen through. So think I might need to basically shake that out, re-amend it, and throw things back in a way that gives the bottom basin a better chance to do what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, I mean, I've had them grown for years in those things without reamending. I mean, with reamending, but without taking it all out. And so far, I haven't seen too many issues. There is sometimes where it's like it just gets way out of balance, or something is going on in the soil where I'll just take and dump that whole soil block out of the whole planter into like my compost outside and just go fresh and reset it and clean all that out. And yeah, there's usually a bunch of usually just roots and maybe a little bit of dirt down there, but not usually a ton.
Yeah, I don't think that there would be too much, but I just figure uh, I'm maybe just thinking in the back of my head like it's a nice time to reset, and I'm curious to see how much of it's down there anyway, and if there's going to be any benefit from doing something like going through and this reamendment. I think that just from the process of getting more of like a fresh start, it's gotten a little bit out of balance. It's probably pH is probably a little bit acidic, and it's probably having some issues with aeration. There's definitely some clay-like sections in my soil that are a little bit thicker clay than I would like to. It's definitely like very raw, natural organic matter. But I would say like the last couple harvests have started to have a similar flavor undertone that I think is like coming from the soil. Like I'm almost like tasting the soil across multiple strains versus like the
Mhm.
strain just expressing itself.
Do
Um,
you have
w-
any worms in your pots or no? No.
no, I haven't. Something I should consider though, because I think that would
You
definitely
wouldn't need
help
a lot,
alleviate.
but maybe a couple. That'd be nice to have. Like if you go down to the gas station and they have the fishing worms, look for some red wigglers, and you don't need a lot, just a few. It might be able to work your soil a little bit for you.
I'm gonna check out. We have this place. It's like a center for environmental innovation in a city near me. That's what they call it. And they have. I used to use the worm castings all the time, but during the pandemic they shut down. And but one of the things they would do was when they'd give you the castings, they'd open up the lid and then they'd shine basically like a shop light or like a work light almost, like
Hmm.
right on top of the castings to basically make all the worms dive down
Down.
so that they could scoop the castings without worms in them. But if I go back there and they are open, which I'd imagine at this point, like pretty much everything's back open, but you never fucking know. Uh, but I think that potentially I could just be like, hey, don't shine the light on them. I want some worms in my next thing of castings.
That'd be
That
a
might be a
hustle.
way to go about it. Just get them with the
You might,
castings,
if you keep getting it that way, that you might still even get some castings with some I forget what they
eggs
call
and
them,
stuff.
casings, yeah.
Yeah,
And there's usually like 3 worms per one of those. So
definitely a way to do it. The
you
thing
can
is,
definitely do it.
I've been fishing just unrelated. So I've been to the spots that carry fish bait and it's like
Mhm.
rare. I don't know if they're like, is there a shortage of that? But there's like, at least where I'm at, um, in the San Diego area. Maybe it's because there's so many other dedicated fishermen, or maybe it's just like they're not making them to the places that I'm going. But all the fish bait I'm seeing is like mostly frozen, like frozen shrimp and all this random shit.
Wow.
Like very little live. Because I grew up like in
Oh,
Ohio.
great.
Like we'd fucking go around with like a stick, a little bit of line, and a hook, and you could use a piece of fucking bread and catch something in the creek. Like it wasn't super complicated. But when you found worms, like you either bought them at the gas station or you could find them out just digging around in the soil. Fish fucking love worms, dude. Like I don't know how that evolutionary process worked, but it's definitely a very effective bait. But that being said, to get back on the growing topic, we do have a question from Weed Nerd DWC who says, "What about differences growing in flower with different night lengths, i.e., 12-12 versus 9-15, gradual drops, etc.?" I haven't gone that far. I usually grow under 11 on, 13 off. Just I think that a little bit longer night cycle can provide a little bit terpier, more colorful, flavorful herb. That was like an old DJ Short thing. Like I think he said Hawaii is mostly on 11, 13 for most of the year, which for a lot of the year it is. And so I tried that, but any less, like I do worry about your yields going down. You'd have to like compensate by either giving like more light during, but even at that point, like they only want like 1,000 on the max without CO2 or like 1,500 ppfd with CO2. So I think that you're getting into a physics thing at some point with like actual amount of yield. So at a certain point, if you drop down to like 9-15 and you're not giving a huge amount of light during that 9 hours, you're not going to be yielding like what somebody at 11 or 12 hours or 13 hours on in flower if they're using like the red initiators or something like that would. But when it comes down to quality, like, are you getting more terpene production? Are you getting better looking bud, better tasting bud, better marketable stuff for your area, higher wash numbers, like bigger percentage of hash yield? If so, maybe it might be worth it. But I'm a if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of person, and I think that our systems currently are pretty solid, but there's always room for improvement. So curious if Spartan and Grown has any takes on the different light cycles for the nighttime during flower.
Yeah, I too remember DJ Short talking, and I believe what he was saying was that with that longer night light cycle, that you had a bigger expression of phenotypical variation. So when you're being a pheno hunter and you're trying to look, or you're a breeder, actually, I think it's more for a breeder, not so much a pheno hunter, but when you're a breeder and you're looking to differentiate, you pop seeds all the same seed pack, right? And you're trying to pick the keeper. You want to see what makes them different from each other. You put it down under less light, and it's going to make those differences pop a little bit more, according to DJ Short. And I believe the guy. I tried it myself, and I found that to be the case too. But I also found that it was reduced yield. I mean, it makes sense when you think about it in the end. And I don't think it was just a yield. I would think THC, everything else, because in actuality, the food for the plant is really light. Light is the real food of the plant. And when you restrict light and you give it less light, same thing with the gas light lantern technique or whatever, when you're saying, I'm saving so much money on electric. Yeah, you're saving money on electricity, not because you're using more efficient lighting, you're providing more light to the plant. You're saving money because you're just turning the lights off and you're not running them. Well, when you turn the lights off, the plants aren't photosynthesizing anymore and they're not building cells anymore. And yeah, you can mitigate that by vegging longer, but now you've you just traded time for where you could have just vegged way fast, you know what I mean, and flipped it. So all of these techniques, I can see where somebody can kind of at first glance think they're good or something, but I think they're all again like tools to be used for certain instances. Um, for you to for example, if you're an outside grower and the light cycle outside isn't the light cycle you need yet, you might have to supplement some light in the middle of the night cycle just to keep them from flipping to flower. That makes sense. Or, things like that. But I don't like to starve my plants of light. I like to get maybe that's why I fell in working with GML with his light company, because I think you should give your plants light if you want to get the best results.
It's a good point, and I actually read that 1113 in his book about like breeding excellent cannabis or whatever the title of that book is. It's really long, but it's good. It's a good read. And from my perspective as like a small batch home grower who's just growing for myself and my wife, and like I'm not going for the biggest yield numbers. I do occasionally like a plant that yields decent if it has good bud. But I like that maximum phenotypic expression because when I'm popping a seed pack, I usually want what this description is. So if it says like strawberry banana, I want something that smells like strawberry and banana. Like, so if I pop a strawberry banana pack and one yields really well and it's gassy as fuck, and it's just like it smells like an OG, but it's called strawberry banana. That's not the pheno I'm keeping, even though it might be good smoke. Maybe I'll keep that cut for a different reason and like maybe give it its own name or something. But generally, I want to find stuff that is true to name. So if it says blueberry, I want it to taste like blueberry, not like lavender or something else. Like where like 8 out of 10 people are gonna be like, damn, that smells like blueberries. Like, did you put blueberries in your soil or like whatever? Like get people like really like hype and questioning, like, man, this is like the real shit, even without telling them, oh, it's called blueberry muffin or blueberry or whatever, the mother of berries or something like that. Like it just smells like it. They just say, oh wow, that smells like this.
Yeah.
And so I think with the 1113, you might have a little bit higher percentage chance to eke out that pheno, but like I do acknowledge that you're going to yield less than a 1212 grow would. And I'm not going to even try to pretend that if I was going for maximum yield that I would be growing on 1113. I try to get like, not to say that like you can't get high quality on 1212 either, because that would be like the other thing that people are going to be like, well, you're saying you're growing 1113 to get more colors, terps, expression, etc. That's not to say that you can't get really good colors, terps, and expression from 1212. I've seen amazing shit grown under 1212.
I know
So
some pretty famous commercial growers or consultants and commercial growers that have their clients actually run more hours of light towards the last part of the light cycle. So like they're doing exactly the opposite of that.
I believe that. I mean, from seed makers to even like people that are producing flour. Somebody was saying like one of the, I think it was actually Chadwick Bradbury who has another follow-up question. But they were asking, I think I copied it, but I don't know if I ever pasted it. Let me see. Oh no, I kept on trying to copy it and then it kept on uncopying because more people kept on chatting. But they were saying like, well, what if you gradually dropped it in like the last 4 weeks and did something like 15:9 or 12:12 to 11:13 to 10:14 to 15:9 or what, whatever it is. Um, Personally, I think like Spartan saying, like you're finding people that are having success in commercial production doing the opposite. Like late in flower, adding more light, getting bigger yields, maybe more resin production. I don't think that terpenes and resin are opposed to light. I'm like Spartan. Like the light is what creates the resin because it's what's creating the plant. The light is the food for the plant. I mean, there's CO2, carbon is a big food of the plant, but photosynthesis without that, you're not growing plants in the dark. I'll tell you that. At least not the ones that we're trying to grow.
Yeah, and it can be deceiving because some growers or some newer growers can look at their plant before the lights go out and then look at them again when the plants come or the lights come on and say, "Wow, they grew a ton during the night cycle." Well, they grew a ton during the night cycle because during the day cycle, it was making sugars and storing that energy from all that light. Also, if they've got extended dark periods, you might, especially in the first couple of weeks of flower, you might see a little bit of more bolting or more stretching than you desire, depending on your situation. Because plants, have this shade avoidance. So if they're in the shade for a long enough time, or think they're in the shade for long enough time, they're going to try to grow around it or up above it. So there's a couple downsides to be wary of when you starve plants of light. But most of us nowadays aren't really starving plants for light. Um, you can get away with because a lot of people are blasting their plants with almost too much light. You can get away with, and it's almost a break for the plants to go with a cycle like that, with the extra hour of darkness maybe to compensate for the extra DLI it's getting while the lights are on.
That's kind of where I'm coming at it from. I know with my LED lights with the reflective tint, even a Vivo Sun, like I felt bad, admittedly, growing in it for a while because it was like the economic tint, and then I saw a test that it actually performed higher than like Growrilla or whatever the Gorilla Grow tent, and I think AC Infinity and things like that. So just from a reflectivity perspective, and but the build quality, obviously there's differences and other things that matter. But when I upgraded from a CMH to an LED, I dropped wattage, but I still had adequate light for my space. I went from 315 to 220 watts. And the 220 watts, even full crank, is like because it's so efficient. And this is Cobb LED. This is like a few generations of LEDs back. Even then, I had so much light. Like I've grown under uh fucking what did they used to call them? High energy efficient bulbs, the curly Qs, CFLs.
Oh, CFLs, yeah.
Yeah, I've grown under CFL bulbs. I've grown under little under the cabinet fluorescent like T5s, T8s. the plant doesn't need extreme intensity to grow. I mean, to veg, you can go with really low intensity. So I think that a lot of people do nowadays overlight their plant for a significant portion. Like even from seedling, I was guilty of it when I first started back popping seeds. I was only had experience growing from clone before. That's we always turned to burn from clone, and we had T5 racks, and then that went to metal halide and HPS checkered, and then full HPS for flower. But we didn't have seedlings being popped all the time. And like, so the first time I ran seedlings, gave them way too much light. And they were like all fucking shriveling up and like turning and burning and like, or then I just gave them too little light and they got too leggy and long and started falling over and shit. And it's like, really gotta, I love my favorite fucking tool is the, whatever the potentiometer is, I think is the technical term, but it's basically a dial on your LED light. If you don't have an adjustable light, I'd highly, highly suggest getting one
I
because
just recently got the Grandmaster level sent me the light controller, and now that's my new favorite thing because now I can daisy chain my lights together, sticking into that light controller, and I can just go like this, and the lights,
right
and
on
I
the
can see
phone,
the intensities all the time, like to the percentage instead of most of those
guessing.
potentiometers. If there's any markings at all, it's like maybe 150 and 25, maybe you might have that.
Dude, mine is nothing.
Like,
It's just a smooth, both of them are just smooth fucking dials from zero all the way up to max. And like
yeah,
even
that's
within that, like
frustrating.
HLG, the one that I bought is like a third party. I just bought it off Amazon and there's like a little thing that plugs onto, it's like a sub $100 light on Amazon. It's like HLG 65 or 100 or whatever. But I have this little dial on it and when it clicks to like turn off, it's off. But then when I click it to turn it on, there's no light, no light, no light, and then the light kicks on at a certain point. So
After
it's
about
like
10%.
yeah, it might even be like 25%, honestly. It's like it's a
Wow.
really fucking far draw. But even then, I can bust out like even a low quality like cell phone sensor to get an idea of where my plants need to be at. And even just like eyeballing it, like I can tell like, oh, it's really dim. Or like, oh, looking at my plants, like they're getting too much light. They're not getting
Yeah.
enough light. They're growing too tall and bushy, or like they're getting really squatty and starting to like taco up and like do shade avoid like light avoidance actually, procedures and things like that. So
There
I
really
think
was a
that's one of the
game
best
changer
tools.
for me in my garden and my own personal growth as a grower was to have that combo of the pro the was it the Pulse Pro, which it has a light meter on it, and then the light controller. It made it so easy for me to sit there with my cell phone with the Pulse Pro taking readings of what light the plants were getting, and then just walking over to the controller and putting it up or down a couple percent, and then taking another reading until I just dial it into the right light that I wanted. There was no raising or lower the light, none of that BS. It's just dimming or lowering. I fucking love LEDs, man. It makes
You
life so
you
much
got me
simpler.
on that too. I stopped raising and lowering. I used to be a raise and lower guy and like set it to the max efficiency or whatever and try and even then like doing little readings here and there and like lower it down, get it to basically as low as possible, but still getting the best readings as possible. Um, like as low energy, as low hanging height and like all that stuff. But I figured out like with the reflectivity of the tents, you're really not getting that much losses. So like leaving it up at the top and then just using that dial and then getting it to the place where it needed to be was something that worked fantastically well and the plants responded to and it saves me a lot of headache of going in there less time I'm raising and lowering lights on those little pulleys the more time I'm looking at my plants and potentially preventing a pest outbreak or noticing maybe there's too little or too much water or some nutrient deficiency or something like that or I could prune this lower leaf because it's not getting light and it's like starting to respire because my humidity is too high and I've got all this under foliage that's not going to turn into anything so I'm going
Yeah,
to start pruning that back.
absolutely, man. Anything that makes my life a little easier, I'm usually all on board on it. Or if it's like a new technology or something that comes out, I'm like, I want it to work so bad. I'm like, I'm like team new tech. Um,
That's
but
why like, I can't go back to
sometimes not
cocoa.
all of it.
Even like automated, like dock system. Like I love that people can get that to work for them, but like I can't keep a res. I've been there, I've done it, and mixing up newts. Even like I used to do it by hand, daily hand watering. But like keeping a res and like just maintaining that and like at least once a week, maybe every 2 weeks if you're really on top of stuff and lucky,
Mhm.
because nature finds a way to start getting that thing funky and starting causing your problems into your garden. But even if I could dial all that in, it's just like the maintenance of it. I'd rather go check the tube on a earth box or a city picker and give some water, maybe like once a month or once every few weeks, give like a little earthworm casting, rinse or something, or humate fertilizer or something like that, or amino N plus, something like that, microbes, things like that.
Maybe just Epsom salt, foliar or something.
Yeah, you don't have to like, not no offense to like bottled nutrients. I used them for a while and I had great results. The end bud was fantastic. I'm not gonna like sit here and say that I didn't have tasty bud and good yields and good looking buds, but the process for me was what pushed me back. And I'm like you were just saying, the ease of use, like as much as cocoa can grow fast and it has a lot of benefits, I just know going back to that comes with all these other side challenges and making it less easy for me. And like the thing that I enjoy the most is spending that time with the plant and bending them and training them. Like there was a while where I stopped topping my plants entirely because like Clackamas Coot was like, if you top your plants, then they lose all this phenotypic expression. I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna try not topping them for a long time and to see like, are they even that much better? And really, to be honest, I felt like no. I disagree with Clackamas Coot on that.
I
Like
say
I
I
think that you
love
could
I
top your
love Jim, but I
plants.
don't agree with everything he says.
Yeah. But I was like, you know what? I just gotta do it for myself just to fucking see because like sometimes like and even with there's people that get respect in the community and then like not to say that it's warranted or unwarranted, but like a lot of people then follow and are faithfully soldiers of sort of their ideology. And like another one would be Jeff Lowenfels. He's written a few books.
Yeah.
And then he came on this very show. He's even like argued with Dr. MJ, or they had their bud versus bud and like talked about de-leafing versus leaving the leaves. And I've gone from like schwazzing all the way, like pretty much stripping the plant butt ass naked to like leaving every single leaf on the plant that doesn't like naturally die or fall off. And I actually went probably more towards the leaving it natural. I do some pruning here and there as I feel fit, just to keep airflow and things like that. But I'm definitely not towards the schwazzing end of things anymore, where I used to be more on that like, yeah, I'm gonna prune pretty heavy and pack a bunch of fucking plants in here and make it work. Because then you get more variety and like you can still get good yields. But I just think that I was working harder, not smarter in that case by doing a lot more pruning. I'd veg the plants for a shorter time, but then I'd have to like pop a bunch more plants and sort them out and do more transplants and things like that. So when I came to the workflow of it all, I wasn't actually doing less work. I was working more, but I was getting a little bit more variety. So like there was some benefit to it. But yeah, it's really hard because sometimes it's not so black and white. There's not like a yes, no answer. Like you sort of find what works in your environment, your experience, the strains you're working with, and lighting systems even. Like I know with CMH, I had to do a little bit more pruning because I had a lot more heat. I had to get a lot more airflow. And it was this improper setup, but a lot of growers, I think, will come across that at some point if they overlight or, under ventilate, whether it's they don't have enough extraction fans or ventilation or air conditioning or whatever, dehumidification even. It can get kind of like a jungle in there before they know it, especially if things are sealed up tight. You see some things glowing in the chat on my side, so I'm gonna try and scroll through and see without accidentally. I like click and then try to scroll, and it's like
Well, we
ban
did have
user
a
from chat.
question. Did we answer the question from Chadwick
No, we
Bradbury?
didn't. But
Yeah,
yeah, that's what we'll do that one next. But I was just scrolling back up to make sure that
oh,
we
okay, we didn't miss
keep the
one.
all. But yeah, Chadwick Berry asks, can you steer a washing style? Okay, let me see if I'm reading this right. Can you steer a washing style cannabis autoflower more for rock hard bud production versus that airy buds?
Okay, so he's calling airy bud. That's a very optimistic view on airy buds, which is fine to have. Like, oh, this is airy buds. Oh, this is good for washing. Yes. It's not desirable as a bud, but it's very desirable for concentrate usually
If it's covered in frost.
if it's
It
covered in
can't just be
frost.
an
And
airy bud and like
it's
not
have good
have good
terpene
stalks.
profile, and usually they have a pretty good terpene profile. And he's wanting to know, can you harden up a? The problem with autoflowers is you don't have a lot of time to manipulate the plant in many ways, and oftentimes I think that a lot of the traditional ways to get to manipulate buds to make them hard have been PGRs, and that's pretty frowned upon in the community. Uh, I don't know. Do you want to get into PGRs, Jack?
We can definitely talk about it. It's something that I haven't seen talked about in a while, and I feel like it used to go around the community every so long. I'd see a photo on the right, you'd see this dense bud that looked like my fist, and on the left, you'd see kind of like a little bit more open, what I kind of call like crowned or almost not quite a foxtail, but like a more natural bud, something that has some sort of like spindly, structures coming off of it. The calyxes or buds are formed in a way that is more open, and
Yeah.
there's natural PGRs and there's non-natural ones. There's the chemical ones that actually can be like carcinogenic. Paclo is one of them. Paclo, like butrazine or something like that,
Well,
is
let's
a.
back up like just 5 seconds and just say, like, for people who don't understand, PGR is just an acronym standing for plant growth regulator. But now Jack is getting into, I think that might be a synthetic, but there's synthetic and there's natural ones. It's not like there's no natural. There, I mean, a lot of the hormones, auxins and cytokinins, these are all plant growth regulators. A lot of most all growers use plant PGRs when they're cloning. If they're using the cloning gel, IBA, that's also a PGR. So a lot of people will, put their nose up at one PGR, but they're okay using another. So it's a fun dynamic to talk to growers about.
There's certainly though different classifications. Like I was talking about Paclo, which is banned in most cannabis cultivation in most regions, but it's used somewhat commonly in the unregulated markets because they're not testing for anything, let alone PGRs. So Paclo is one that is known sort of like Eagle 20 is what is the actual chemical name for that stuff?
Is it paclobutin?
Paclobutanol is the one, or no, myclobutanol is Eagle
Michael.
20. And myclobutanol is basically a systemic pesticide that, when it's combusted, turns from myclobutanol to hydrogen cyanide. And for those who don't know, just from hearing that, it's pretty toxic. And it's actually, there's a fairly low, I think it's like 1,200 or 1,300 parts per million of that will kill you. So inhaling hydrogen cyanide is poisonous and damaging. And obviously, when we're trying to induce, you know, take in medicine, we don't want to be poisoning ourselves. So avoiding those PGRs is important. But you can get stuff from like kelp or other like cytokinins and auxins that are gonna, be plant growth regulators. For a long time, they were actually called plant growth retardants because it was meant to make the plant shorter or stockier or bushier or bulkier. And in our case, looking for bulkier buds. But I do want to take a second to welcome Brandon Rust, who just jumped in just a minute ago.
Hey, yep. Sorry I was late. I was out and about and stuff, but I made it back to the hotel and here I am. So glad to be here.
Good to see you,
Glad to
man.
have you. We were just talking a little bit about Chadwick Bradbury asked the question, can you steer a washing style autoflower with a more loose bud structure into a more rock hard bud production? And I was kind of saying just because it's loose doesn't mean it's always a good washer, but it is tend to be a little bit easier washer if it is frosted. And then kind of the other thing I wanted to comment on that is that rock hard bud production can come with its own sort of downsides as well, like more likely to get powdery mildew or bud rot, botrytis, and molds after the fact. So there's some benefits to the area buds, but if you're in a really dry climate where you're not necessarily dealing with a lot of that kind of stuff, even rock hard buds can make really good hash and end up washing well if you break them up and manipulate them a decent amount. A lot of the Afghan bud for a long time was pretty dense, more hard, rocky nugs, but they made great hash with it.
Yeah. My sour cheese berry, when you flip it, you need to prune it all the way up to the top three nodes if you want to have just solid like tops. If you don't do that on that particular variety, the structure is much looser. It's great unpruned for like hash making, but it's way better for flower production if you take those extra pruning steps. So some varieties are just like that, where they need a little bit more pruning at the bottoms to really put on that extra uh, density.
Have you
Or even to
found any
prevent herming.
techniques? Have you find techniques like that work with autoflower? Because autoflower makes it kind of tricky because you don't really want to stress them and stuff.
Well, I don't see why it would. Is if your plant's in a good, healthy environment and you've got good nutrition and stuff and it growing at a healthy rate. I don't think that, pruning up the bottoms when it's like, hey, this thing's about to start flowering, or if you notice that it's flowering, maybe doing that could potentially help. But again, I think it's going to be contingent on the variety and how they react to that type of stress stimulation.
Yeah.
So on the PGR questions, Grateful added 1 and 2 saying, do they remain only in the plant material after hashing, or will the hash have PGR's residual residue as well? I'm not
Oh,
confident that I've seen evidence of PGRs in resin, but I haven't looked super hard for that
in
information.
all honesty, dude, I don't know a whole lot. about synthetic PGRs just because I've never used them. You know what I mean? The closest thing I think that I ever used, and I probably only ever used it like once before it got taken off the market, was this product called Bush Doctor.
I think I used something that was called Avalanche way back in the day that was supposed to harden buds.
I
What was your
remember the
shows on?
Avalanche being marketed for uh, bud hardening.
I just have no idea what the hell the what was in it.
Yeah. But natural PGRs, things like cytokinin, indole 3 acetic acid, gibberellic acid, salicylic acid.
Yeah.
These are all or
So,
natural organic compounds that are often associated with microbial metabolism, and they can have a net positive effect on things like the upregulation of uh, genes and chemical message. They act as chemical messaging signals and all kinds of cool, fun stuff like that that works on the plant's operating system.
Aclobutrazol is the one that I've most commonly seen, but there's a few other ones out there as well that were unfortunately in some of those earlier like cannabis branded nutrients that
Yeah.
were for bulking and things like that.
I
Um,
remember when they started taking those things off the market because there was shitload of companies that had similar products that were strictly marketed for hardening buds. And back in the early 2000s, 2004, 2005, 2006, they were hitting those things hard. And then just out of nowhere, like all of those products were like not on the shelves anymore. Like I said, that Bush Doctor was short lived. And I think it was because it was one of those PGRs that caused the plant to be more stout and stockier.
wouldn't surprise me to be honest. Like I said, that stuff was fairly common, unfortunately, in the early 2000s before we knew any better. I mean, there was so little cannabis research being done, and this stuff is being used on turf grasses and other, I think they call them ornamentals or something like that. The crops that we don't eat or smoke, the stuff that's kind of just grown for, you know, environmental purposes, like to have around like a golf course or to have like in your backyard or landscaping is the term that I was looking for more likely. So they have purposes for stuff like that. They'll like trim a bush and then they'll spray the stuff on there and then that bush will stay like the same fucking height. So no one's eating or smoking that bush. So it doesn't necessarily matter as much. But that's what that stuff is really intended for, use and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, it's certainly unfortunate when it crosses over into products that aren't supposed to really be using that kind of stuff because it has negative benefits on the end user. Um, I
but
was looking into,
there's positives. I mean,
Like Avid.
I hate to some of these PGRs. I hate for people to be like completely 100% against all PGRs because there's applications even for some synthetic PGRs, but be a scientist and have all the protection equipment because you don't want it to touch your skin and this kind of stuff. But look at tissue culture. A lot of the tissue culture techniques, it's required to have PGRs, man. That's kind of what they're doing. They're replicating cells, so they're trying to introduce these things to encourage that.
that whole concoction is basically one big PGR recipe. I mean, they're using auxins, hormones, cytokinins, and different sort of plant growth regulators to keep the plant basically in a test tube and trying to get it sterile and, clean of pathogens and viroids and viruses and things like that. So I'm a fan of using it, like you're saying, in the proper application. Like cloning is an example. Like you can use IBA or IB3, whatever it's called, indole butyryl, whatever, acid. But
Uriatic acid.
and that will help you get roots, but so will like a fresh chunk of aloe vera, which like in Southern California, that shit's just everywhere. You could find it just growing around, or you could go to, local Home Depot or big box store and get a chunk of it, or find some organic at like your local supermarket here. They have big, leaflets of it that you can buy and just cut off a little piece and use that as your rooting gel, and it's effective. So there's lots of options out there, and it does make me think back a little bit to the question though about washing that auto. And the thing with washing autos is like it's sort of like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get with autos. Like the breeding's gotten more consistent. You got people like formerly Mandalorian. I think he's Gnome Automatics now, and a handful of others who've been doing this for like a decade plus, that are really putting out pretty consistent autos. But even then, you'll see some inconsistencies even within the same person's garden or from one pheno to the next. And I look at that as like I always use the Kardashians as an example because it's a family that a lot of people know. But you have like Kim, Courtney, and Chloe, right? And they're all from allegedly the same parents, and they all kind of look different. They all kind of act different. They might have some similarities. Like, yeah, they're all Kardashians, but they're not the same exact individual. And the same goes for plants, and especially like autoflowers, where you're not able to work with and keep cuts and mothers that you get intimately familiar with, how they grow, how they breed, and working with them for years and years. Like Brandon's got Limarilla cuts and clones and sour cheeseberry and these things that he's had for years. He knows how they smell. He knows how they taste. He knows how they might interact. And even if he doesn't, it could be like, oh, well, I've done 5 projects with that, and the progeny tend to lean towards mom or lean towards dad or be some mix of both. And when it's crossed to something like this, then it puts out something like that. But with an auto, you're kind of a little bit more challenged with the limitation of being able to not keep them. Not to say that it can't be done. It's definitely a challenge that they're at the same time they're doing like 5 runs per year. So instead of like one and then like testing it out, they're going with it and then testing the next generation and then testing the next generation and so on. And they're doing like more F4, F5, F6 work than I'm seeing on a lot of the photo period stuff. So it's a tricky market, I think, but they're finding their place for sure. And there's definitely autoflowers that are being sold on all markets. I guess in Michigan's commercial market, California's, Oklahoma's, and everywhere else. And they're not saying autoflower on it because nobody knows, nobody cares. The end user's like, does it have THC? Does it have terpenes? Does it have other good smelling, tasting things that make me feel good? Then sure, I'm going for it. Like, it's a good price point. Can I afford it? All right, cool. Speaking of which, I'm actually smoking on some really good terpy stuff. Some Northern California grown. It's got a fun name. It's called Black African Magic, which I think it's got to have some Durban in it. It smells just like Durban. My wife said all of her coworkers were saying it's like the best smelling Jack that they've ever seen. But it to me smelled like Jack does smell a little bit like Durban. It's terpinolene heavy THCV in there for sure. And man, it's pleasant high. If you haven't ever gotten a chance to smoke that kind of herb, it is so nice. Like if you aren't paranoid of something, like if you are able to smoke sativas and like not have panic attacks, um, I would highly recommend Durban Poison or Jack Herrera, Jack the Ripper, some of these things that have high THC, high THCV, and a good amount of terpinolene. It'll smell kind of like sweet, piney, and like citrusy, but it just it's a creative high. It's a happy high for me. It's focused usually. You can get a lot of shit done and still be productive and go about, running your business and or even just going to work if you have a job or taking care of your family if you have kids, elders, whoever you have to take care of. It's something that won't hold you down and stick you on the couch, which a lot of stuff nowadays has kind of gotten pigeonholed into that. Where Brandon, I know, is actually one who's kind of fighting back against that by putting out lots of stuff like Limarilla and other crosses that are more uplifting and you tend to stick on the more uplifting side of smoke. So I'm happy that you and others are out there kind of advocating for herb that
God, man, I'm too
keeps you
busy. I'm
creative.
too busy to be couch locked.
I'm there with you. That's like
God,
GG4 is one of my favorite, but I can't smoke it too much. Otherwise, I do kind of tend to
I can smoke
lounge
G.
around.
I can smoke Gorilla Glue all day though. I love Gorilla Glue, man. One of my favorites. I still, I hold on to that cut. I've had that cut for 10 years now. Yeah, it's 11 years now. 11 years.
It's crazy, man. It's good stuff. I like it. It's I use it for pain relief and like afternoons or nights, or if I'm just
The,
like really feeling an injury.
the hash that's made from Gorilla Glue is like I feel like so artistic. I don't know if that's the right way to express it, but I feel so like I it gets me in such a creative like flow. I love Gorilla Glue.
It's fire. I'm never gonna stop liking GG4.
I didn't I never found a high medicinally better than GG4 for myself for pain until I found Donnie Burger, in my opinion.
It's definitely, I think, a little bit packs a little bit more potency than GG4. GG4 might be a little bit more pleasant to some, I would say, based on like flavor and like The immediate effect of GG4 isn't as
Oh, a
much of like
million
a
times, in my opinion, GG4 the flavor beats Donnie all day.
I'm there with you on that. I like the GG4 flavor more, but Donnie, for me, like if I'm looking for that hard hitter, it thumps you like immediately. Like you feel like you just got socked with like a nice, you've been smoking for like an hour, but you've really only smoked like a hit or two, you know? It's like it's on you immediately, and then you just get higher, and it just like numbs the pain and makes you just feel incredible and like relaxed, and it's a fantastic bud.
Another one I just recently tried was Banana Conda. I'll be growing more of that one because that one was frosty as hell. It's out of the East Coast, Northeast. I believe it was Maine or someplace like that when I looked up the genetics on it. But yeah, shout out Banana Conda. That's a nice one too. My dogs are noisy. I'm sorry.
It's all good, man. Maine actually has some fire. I just saw somebody who said that they've been holding the mother of berries cut for like 25 years or something like that, which or maybe 35. I can't even remember. They said it's like their parents had it and like kept it and like it's been passed down generation to generation. And I had that in Kineos Berry Lights, which ended up after a few months curing out to being really nice blueberry. It was like piney gassy up front, but that was because it was crossed with like a NL5 that was F2'd for piney phenos, which it was a killer cross. I still have some seeds of that, which I kind of work my way back to. Going back to the whole earlier topic of like having killer seeds, I do want to pop. Maybe I want to do one. I think this time because last time I was going to do a monocrop of the and it just worked out like this because I actually popped like 15 seeds, like maybe 5 or 10 of them were Vortex, F2, Project V from Spartan, and then like 5 or 10 of a few other varieties. And like the way that they were vegging, when I sex tested them, the best ones were all happened to be Project V. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take those two because they're the best two. That's just my way of running things. And I ended up fucking up a few times when I went on vacation and then last week or whatever, not getting to transplant them and drought stressing them over and over until they basically died. I ended up calling them. But this time I think knowing that they have the potential to grow really well, I'll pop like maybe 5 or 10 of those, and then a handful of some of Brandon's work because I really want to get into some of that. Like I think I have a Lime One to Limarilla back cross, something like that, and I've got a handful of like Gorilla Glue stuff that's crossed with a little bit more, um, I think Limarilla type stuff as well. So I want to maybe have one Project V and then one of Brandon's crosses that I just mentioned, or the similar ones that I have in the collection in the next run, and go from there.
All that Limarilla stuff I've ever grown has been fucking fire. Limarilla is a really good strain, I think.
The plant that I have breeds really great characteristics to the offspring, and they're always really loud. You know, they're always really loud varieties. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I grow them because they're just really pungent.
That's one of my number one qualifiers is like I want something with a really great nose. Um, it should taste good on the palate too. Ideally, usually stuff that smells really good does taste really good. It's not always that way though. I think there's a few exceptions that everybody may have come across here and there. But something that smells amazing, and generally for me, I'd say 8 out of 10 times the smell corresponds with the effect really well. Like what I was describing, that Black African Magic it smelled like a Jack Herer, smoked kind of like a Jack Herer or a Durban. It was similar highs, similar taste, and I was really excited about that, you know. But I didn't know it until I smoked it, obviously. But even like sometimes just smelling it, you get that a little aromatherapeutic effect of like, wow, it's like holy shit, I haven't smelled anything like that in a while. Like it's a nice change of pace, and so yeah, I've got some Swazi Gold as well. My wife is starting to work with this group, the Bohemian Chemists up north. She's got like fancy little weed briefcase that like pops open. It's like a display case of all their different stuff. And I've been thoroughly enjoying it. We actually met them at Hall of Flowers last year. There was like 300 brands. We walked around and like shook a bunch of hands because she was a purchaser. And that was like one of the two brands that I was actually like excited about. And like over a year later, she ends up being one of their regional reps. And now she brings on their stuff to the shop that she works with. And she's bringing it on to hopefully more shops to Southern California. But it's actually like good weed in the legal market to me is hard to find. So when I actually find some, I'll let you guys know about it because, you know, I'd say 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 are you're overpaying for shit. Uh, there's just no two ways about it. It's over dried, gonna have maybe 1.5% terpenes. Like to hit two, even just give me 2% and up. Like I've got shit that's like 7% from the legal market, so I know it's possible. But you can't like, and terps aren't everything. I get it, like esters, flavonoids, aldehydes, ketones, all that other stuff that's not going to show up. Give me something loud, like this one group right here, CBX. Their flagship strain is called Cereal Milk, and it's not the cookie cereal milk or whatever. I've talked about this a few times, but 25% THC. It's not boasting some huge mega number. 25% is like low average in nowadays, and it's a little over 2% terpenes, but the smell on this and taste on this, it actually tastes like fucking cereal milk. Like it's got a very rich, creamy smell. Is immediately upon breaking it up, it's like, wow, it smells like organic whole milk or something mixed with like sugar from like Frosted Flakes or something sitting in it. It's like sweet and milky. It's just fucking unbelievable, phenomenal shit. But XYZ Vector has another question. It says, what is the best seed you've ever grown and why do you feel that way? And I'll pass that to Spartan Grown.
Okay. Well, first, talk about the cereal milk. I wanted to add. I don't have the container with me right here because I already cleared it out. But Fagroli made a mix, and he took his limes, 40% lime skunk, 40% of clementine, and then 20% cobra milk. And it was like this limey, creamy limesicle. It was so good. So shout out to Terpinolene and Fagroli, man, making those mixes. But yeah, the I thought about this question a bit, and I think my answer would have to be Bliss Button. I don't talk about this a lot, but it's one of my very first crosses, and it's a sour D heavy strain and lineage, but it's sour D on one side, and the other side is a pineapple Thai cross to sour strawberry. So that's the 2020 strain. But it's a very uplifting strain. It's a depression beater. It's kind of a broken record. I grow a few strains that are heavy just for night, but most of the stuff I like to grow is the uplifting stuff. And this stuff works really well for that. Puts you in a good mind space if you're not in a good mind space usually. And it's very, very sour D heavy. So when you crack that jar, it just punches you in the face with that kind of sour D kind of smell.
I love sour D, and I think that's like the what you said earlier, kind of the stress reliever. That's the portion of it for me. Although it's like a great high, just like I think it has a little bit of a visual experience for me. Like it brightens everything up. Yeah, I've said it almost makes me feel like I have astigmatism, or if I do have astigmatism, it like makes it worse. But everything's like a little bit brighter. It's like at night, like the street lights almost look like they have like lasers coming off of them, kind of thing. Like they're just like really bright and like flaring. But even during the daytime, it's just like almost has like a sepia tone glow on my world. Like the world's like a little bit gold, but it's like a positive, like happy fucking smiling sun, like shining down on even on a cloudy day. I'm just like, wow, why am I so happy? I'm like driving to work. I'm like, I'm in a fucking great mood. It's like, oh, I had sour diesel or like raspberry diesel or something that's like got diesel in it. I'm just like, damn, this shit is like I understand why people are like, oh, you need to smoke a little bit sometimes, like to somebody who's like in a pissed off mood, because if they've smoked something like this
Yeah.
and they understand that effect, they know it could take that crabby ass person who's like, maybe they're hangry, maybe they are a little pissed off about work or like hungry, whatever it is, overtired, or just generally pissed off about, they say if you're not pissed off, you haven't paid enough attention. Some people say that. So maybe they're just pissed off about one thing or another, but like cannabis definitely has the capacity, I think, to mellow people down. And somebody once said to me, like, cannabis for them is almost like a volume dial on like the bullshit meter in life. And like, it's almost like walking over to the radio and like turning down the bullshit. Like, oh, like I'm pissed off about this. Like, I'm gonna just turn that down. Like, fuck this shit. I'm fine.
Yeah,
Everything's
it
good.
just turns the fucking noise from a 10 to like a fucking 6, man. It's tolerable now. It's not so
Like,
bad.
and that could be pain, or it could be fucking politics or whatever local thing that you're worrying about, family, finance, spiritual, romantic. There's so many things that everybody has challenges in life. Like even the richest people, the sometimes like I think Chappelle pointed out like some of the people that live on $1 a day, like 50% of them are like really happy. And that always kind of blew my mind. Like I saw some TV show when I was a kid and like there was a homeless family being presented. And I was blown away by the fact that like it was the show that was The Proud Family, if anybody's ever heard of it. And this family that they run into, she was like, you know, her family, they had mom and dad, kind of a core family or whatever, and she felt like they had a lot going for them, but she would go through struggles and things like that. And then she saw this one family that like was at a food shelter and they were all so happy and just like loved each other and were there for each other. And it was like they didn't have a lot, but they loved what they had. And they loved that there was even a food shelter to give out food and things like that. Like they just appreciated everything. And then she made her realize like those people, like there's people that are going to be billionaires and they're going to be miserable. Like I heard some guy said, I have 20 friends who are billionaires and 19 of them are miserable. So like money isn't going to be the root of all solutions for people that they might think it might be. And getting back to the seed thing, because I'm getting far off topic there, but I think that um, funny enough, it was a seed that I didn't even buy for me. It was one that I was gifted from a guy who invited me in to smoke me out when I was working as a delivery driver at a medical delivery service back in Prop 215. And I ended up like growing this stuff out. And this was after I went through that whole seed buying phase of like, oh, I'm gonna buy these breeders. And like I found a lot of killer shit. So I'm not gonna like talk shit on people buying seeds. Like do what Big Pone did, do what I did, buy a bunch of seeds, grow a bunch of them, and find the ones that you like, and like figure out which seed banks and breeders and everything like that are legit. And make little notes and save yourself money if you can get deals and discount codes and things like that. But best seed I ever grew was, I would say, it was called Spiked Punch. When I got the package, it said Jack's Spiked Punch because they're sending it to me, Jack, and they wrote Jack's Spiked Punch on the bag. It was like literally sent to me in rosin press bags because this was from Vegan Doja, who makes a lot of rosin. So he had like these little spare rosin press bags, and they were just like folded over, and then like had like kind of like a little clip like this that like held together like a pack of like 4 or 5 of these strains, and they all just had permanent marker written on them. And this is why, for anybody who's bought or gotten tester seeds from Jack of the Velvet Punch, I'm not a believer in fancy packaging. In fact, my packaging is so minimalist, you might not even know that you have Velvet Punch if you fucking put it in with the rest of your collection because it's just a vial with a cork. I started writing like VP and like F3 or F2 on the corks, but in the beginning, it was just like recycled stuff, like what is it, bubble wrap and a black bubble mailer because I don't give a fuck what the packaging looks like if the seeds don't grow good weed. And this shit that came to me in this random ass rosin press bag with a handwritten note on it and permanent marker ended up growing out to be the most potent, tasty, and biggest yielding plant that I'd ever grown. Like still to this day, like that strain, like I ended up sending them all back to him to make F2s. He moves around and does a lot of different projects. So I wish I would have kept at least like 1 or 2 because he's a little bit delayed, but he's actually getting started back up in Maine. Shout out to Maine. We were speaking of that a little bit earlier. But man, the stuff was just like kind of a nice touch of purple. It actually was more pink. It was like a pink bud. Like the resin was pink on it. And it smelled really gassy and it had kind of like a grape Smarties kind of flavor undertone. So it's kind of like the spiked punch, but it was more um the sweetness of the grape Smarties came out more and the gassiness was more there. Like it was just like the male on that spiked punch is different than the velvet punch. So there's actually fairly significant differences there, but I think they're both phenomenal. But that being like a brand like a brand new breeder to me that I'd like never seen anybody else grow his work. Um, and his shit was just like above and beyond the best. And that's why when I grew the Velvet Punch, I ended up F2ing and then F3ing them because I was like, this shit's fire. I'm not gonna make the same mistake again and cut a bunch of because like I popped 15 and I think I got like 13 males and 2 females on the Jack Spike Punch. And so I was like, those 2 females both ended up being fucking phenomenal. But I grew because I was so distrusting the farmer Freeman process. I grew all 13 of those males in like small cups in a little veg area
Oh
through
man.
flower. So
Wow.
yeah, that was like one of my first farmer Freemans because I was like, there's no fucking way that it's 13 and 2. Like, and it turned out it was, but I just had a bunch of little males and like I sealed that fucking chamber so tight that no air could go in or out. So like the males basically just got enough light and like, to show and like verify like, oh yeah, they are in fact males and like about to throw pollen and I just chopped all of them down. But man, that was a gut punch when you pop 15 and you only get 2 females. But granted, I only needed 2. It actually showed me, oh, I can make my space work with 2 good females instead of doing like 6 or however many I could squeeze in there.
That's so crazy odds, man.
I've seen people that go like 10 for 10, all male. They get a 10 pack and all 10 are. And if you do get something like that for some weird reason, if you can show it to me, I'll fucking replace your pack because,
I got
that's
my Mac V2 pack from Capulator. There was 11 seeds, 10 of them were male, and then only one was a female. Luckily, that one female was good, and I ran it into commercial production for like about a year. I did that use a male out of that though because I was like, fuck, dude. I was like, it was like a pack. It was the only. It was like the first pack I actually fucking paid for, and I was like, what the hell is going on here? And I ended up using that male though. That's how I created the Limelight. The Limarilla Mac V2. But yeah, it
Nice.
happened to me. I use really strong males that often are dominant. So I see a pretty um pretty healthy ratio. It's pretty healthy ratio of males when I make seeds.
Do you have an answer for the question earlier? What's the best seed that you've ever popped?
Best thing that I've ever popped.
Yeah, from seed, grown from seed.
Yeah, it was Limarilla for sure. For sure.
That makes
No,
sense.
actually, it wasn't. It was Limarilla crossed into Purple Kush. It was my death breath. That was the best thing that I ever grew through from seed. I wish I fucking still had that cut. And she was fucking insane.
Sounds like it was for sure some fire. I think my runner up might be my Sour 76, which was like a Afghani cross to like a basically like a headband back cross. It was like a Cali Sour D, which is basically like a headband cross to Sour Diesel. And there's just like a lot of headband and OG in there mixed with a nice little bit of Afghani and some citrus that kind of had like we're talking about earlier with the phenotypic expressions. I was running 1113. One was like pure tangerine, one was pure lemon, and one was pure lime. So as far as like the citrus note, but the undertones were heavy, kind of hashy Afghani. And then like funny enough, it relates to another question that we talked about earlier with the autoflower. Two of them had rock hard nugs. The tangerine pheno and the lemon pheno were both like this, like perfectly dense little. They looked like little baseball bats. Like I had like 4 or 5 colas, and they just were just pure nug meat. Like this was when I was actually more on the schwazzing side of things, and I de-leafed a lot. It was one of my smaller yields, but like god damn, like every single plant had just pure buds, like all the way up the whole stalk, and they were beautiful, good bud. But the one that smelled like lime was really foxtailed. Like it was way like completely different bud structure. It was like a 2 or 3 inches taller and just had those colas that kind of spin around, if you know what I'm saying, where like it doesn't grow evenly on both sides. It has more of like it was foxtailed because it was too hot and I had too much light, but there was definitely it was foxtailed, but the other plants right next to it that were, the same genetic lineage were not. And, it could be like where the light was positioned, et cetera. And I think that had some play on it, but maybe that had part of the play on the expression as well. Like a little bit too much light made it taste more limey and made it more open bud structure versus the one that were like the two in the corner got tighter bud structure, but they were different citrus tones, which I always think is just like so fascinating. That's one of the fun parts about growing is like if you pheno hunt, like you'll start to have these experiences and memories. And like I look back through like my Instagram, which is like grows from years ago, and just like even like my photos as I go back through them and flowers in the jars, like smelling them and smoking them still now. I've even got some hash from like a few years ago that is just sitting in my freezer. That, like I'll bust out every now and then and like break off a little piece of it and just be like, wow, it's like a time capsule. It can really take you back and be a great memory. We do have a nice comment from Future 608, uh, Devil's Harvest. It says, I've got a cereal milk and flour, 4 auto rec from 2020, 4 reg seeds of Big Sur Holyweed, which that's another one. Bohemian Chemist, shout out to them. We've got some Big Sur Holyweed in the Curador right now, which is not one that you see too often around here anymore, but it smells really good. And some clones of Black Maple and cereal milk. So sounds like they've got some pretty good stuff coming down the pipeline.
I love having new stuff coming. That's my favorite. When people say, "What's your favorite strain?" My favorite strain is the whatever the newest thing I popped that I haven't had before, and I want to grow it and I want to smoke it and I want to see what it's like. That's my favorite one. The unknown, man.
That's the whole like fun of like that's why I've stopped keeping cuts. Is like if I kept cuts, I would have so much of my space taken up by those cuts in my flower room, and I have a really small flower tent. So I just grow from seed every time and get new shit every single time. And it's like if I want cuts, my buddies, if I find some really cool shit, we'll hang on to them. Or like I can just literally keep it in veg until I feel like, you know what, I want to grow that again and pull a clone off of that. I kind of go like 1 gallon mother plant style where I'll let it like grow up, take cuts off of it, then reclone that, and then put another one into like solo cup and then 1 gallons and kind of keep that cycle so you don't take too much space. But I just find I'm always more excited to like try the one that I haven't tried before. Popping that one from seed, even if like I grew it and then I grew it from clone and like got it really dialed in and I got this nice flavor. And I'd like to have enough space that I could have like a stable, like Smiley and Spartan and some of the other guys that are on the panel. They have like a stable you can get. You know, I think for a while you had uh, Spartan glue and a few others, and
Yep.
you can rotate it, and the one gets Spartan kicked. It has to go against the. I like your arena kind of analysis where you've got it has to kind of replace one of the kind of standing champions, and I love that. It's got to come in and prove itself, and not only with that, but like with your medical patient base and yourself and your friends and family and things like that.
Absolutely. It has to be better than what I've already got, man. I can't get rid of something I already have for something that's worse. And the regulations in the state tell me I can't keep too many. So for now, I've got to do that. But yeah, of course, I would love to just keep everyone, right? Just to have a stable of them all. That would be nice. Or all the keepers anyway.
Do you have a great white buffalo? It sounds like Brandon's his would be the one that he just talked about, the death breath, the one that got away, so to speak, for
Yeah.
those who haven't seen Hot Tub Time Machine.
Yeah, it was Viper City OG, and it was the purple. So there's purple phenos and green phenos of it, and it was a pheno hunted purple pheno, and it was awesome, and I loved it. It was a low yielder though, so eventually it was at the time of the heyday of my caregiving, and it had to get a lot of flower, and it just wasn't. It was a detriment to have, but I sure wish I had it still. Such a beautiful, got really dark purple
I
coloring in the buds. It was a pretty plant.
I crossed my death breath to a bunch of other stuff a couple years ago. So I recently just popped a bunch of new stuff. I popped a bunch of Purple Kush MK Ultra, just a bunch of stuff. I spoke with Yellow Wolf's attorney the other day, and I've
Like
been
the
talking
music
to,
artist, Yellow Wolf?
yeah, I've
Nice.
been I've been talking to his mom. Like she calls every couple of days and stuff. Essentially, what we're doing is a national cannabis brand together. Can be pretty awesome. Since I already work with farms all across the country, it makes sense logistically to partner up with some of these farms, and I could put something that I bred for the brand, you know, uh, and essentially it would be. I'm actually writing a business proposal while we're doing the podcast, but it would essentially be a uh, branding and marketing play where they provide packaging for the farm we and the genetics, and then it's a co-branding and marketing where they help drive sales through the power of their um you know
Media.
the media that they've created, and it will help drive those sales, and for that it's like they get a certain percent. So if they contract and they get a wholesale price of $1,200 a pound or whatever, and they're selling it for 1,600 or something like that. That's how the brand can make money without actually holding a license. It's just to do essentially it's like a marketing distribution play where they're tacking on a point for a couple points for generating sales.
At least this time it'd be with some decent quality flower. It seems like if you're one of the people who's behind it in the cultivation and you're linking them up with good people, because a lot of the time the failure I've seen with celebrity brands is they put a cool celebrity brand, a cool celebrity influencer who's known for using cannabis, but at the same time they don't do the due diligence of getting actually good quality cannabis in there.
Yeah,
So people try it once and then they're like, oh, this is dog shit. So XYZ celebrities weed is garbage. And then they
because I
kind
was
of are forever
I
known for that.
when I was in Vegas, I was talking to the guys that run T Call. That's Method Man's brand. And I was like, I was like, look, because they're essentially the willing to partner up with anybody who's willing to partner up with them. I was like, well, if somebody's just partnering up with you guys because you have a celebrity name attached to it, it doesn't necessarily mean that farms will be producing quality. I was like, I was asking, who's doing your QC? How are you doing QC? It's like there is no QC.
That should be
So
yeah, that should be the first question for any brand that wants to protect their image. They should want a quality product, so there should be some kind of guarantee for quality, you'd think.
the problem is you might have you know, 8 great farms, but then you might have two that have poor quality. If you're not doing quality control and the customers get bad batches in that bag, they're never going to buy that bag again. They're never going to buy that. So The cool thing is, since I already work with farms all over the country, I write their fertigation plans. I'm already looking at their soil data. I help with integrated pest management, biosecurity. So I know what they're doing. I know the qualities. I'm seeing their test results. They send me all this stuff, and they keep me informed on, their progress and everything else. So it wouldn't be any different from what I'm already doing. I'm already working with these people on a regular basis. It would just be a branding collaboration.
I like it. I like
I
it a
think
lot.
that QC is the major thing. That's the most important. If you look at in the regular business world, Matthew has brought this up in the past, and others have probably talked about it, but In-N-Out, which is a burger restaurant here on the West Coast and Southwest part of the US, has not expanded to the rest of the US, even though there's great demand for it. And they're only expanding by 5 restaurants per year, which is a snail's pace compared to like Subway, for an example, was
Yeah.
expanding like 7 restaurants per week at the height of their growth.
There's more subways in than any other fast food chain in this country. There's more subways than anything else. More than McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King.
And a bunch of them have shut down. But that being said, like they still have a fairly large and successful franchise that has expanded very far. But at the same time, the quality of Subway, because there's so many of them, you might go to one in your hometown, it might be great. You might go to
Yeah.
another one in my hometown, it might be garbage. And the thing with In-N-Out, every single time you go, you're getting that certain level of quality assurance. So like if I was one of those celebrity brands trying to, somebody said rebranded Mids Booferoni or something like that, which I think is kind of funny. A lot of times it is. But you keep those 8 farms that are good and then you cut the 2. If you have 2 that are providing you lower quality stuff, then, it might be a good price or whatever. But like ultimately, like you're saying, the brand reputation, once it takes a hit, people know. And like that's why some of them, they might come out, do a brand, and then it might do well for like a few months or half a year or a year, and then it's not around for 2, 3, 4, 10, however many years. The people that are gonna stick around are gonna be the people that provide consistently good product at a reasonable price, which is somewhat difficult to do depending on the market. And they're also still competing, let's be honest, with the unregulated market. People can just sell stuff to other states. They could, um, people can get stuff from people that are not on metric in their state, whether it's a caregiver, like through a totally legal avenue, or from Joe Average dude who's just slanging it on the street, who's picking up packs from wherever and then flipping them. So there's so many different markets that it really does get difficult, and differentiating can be difficult. But I'm a fan of Yellow Wolf, their music, and I think that with somebody like you in their corner, they're going to have a much better chance at success than a lot of these people that just come in and kind of like get sucked up by some Chad or Brad who's got an investor who says, "Hey, we could use Method Man because he's got big name and big market recognition, and we're just going to kill it out of the box because he's already big in the weed community. He's got weed movies. How could it fail?" And it's like, well, we've seen enough of them try. From I hate to say it, like Tommy Chong to Cheech Marin, and I still get ads on X.com for cruise chews and things like that. So they must be selling some of them, like the CBD chews and things like that, are 50 state or 49 state legal. I guess like New Hampshire or some weird
I
state is
got
illegal.
I got contacted. They wanted me to will you sponsor them or something or use them as their sponsor, whatever that is, and sell their gummies. I'm like, nah, man, thank you.
Yeah, I see them everywhere. I get Target ads for that all the time on X.com. And it's one of those weird things where, uh, you know, I'm not necessarily their target market, but at the same time, they probably do sell a bunch to people that use cannabis regularly, just as like a addition, or maybe they give it to their grandma, their mom, or their aunt and uncle, whoever knows Tommy Chong.
Big market is the red states. They'll order a lot of that CBD stuff.
Oh yeah. Even like there's like these Delta 9 flower shops and stuff. It's getting pretty crazy. Even in a lot of like red states. Like Texas is like pretty anti-cannabis, but even there, like I've seen some videos of people going into like what looks like a dispensary to me. And I'm fucking you know, spent several decades out here where we've got the dispensary model pretty much laid out and seen it in every flavor and shape and design and size, like most of the options available. I mean, there's some massive ones to some tiny ass ones and everything in between. Like you could still get a bike courier, fucking people dropping you shit off on a bicycle or hand delivering you shit. It's like it's just so vast and diverse. Like I hate to say that like they're never going to stop like certain markets, but like I do think that is the case, unfortunately, like or fortunately, there's always going to be some amount of unregulated product that's moving through the system in every market. So whether it's food or clothes or cannabis, there's going to be some people, duplicating, replicating, selling fake shit, selling, whatever it is. there's a always people that want that brand that maybe can't afford it, but want it at a cheaper price. And they'll go get it from the, knockoff market. And it's funny, you do see that in cannabis. People buying fucking Wish.com bags, and you get like 6 month or a year old cookies branded or whatever the fuck branded. It might even be current. I mean, some of these fucking things they're the ones fucking selling it to the guys at Cookies or whoever, like they're
Cookies,
buying all this shit from China. All this packaging is
cookies,
coming from the same factories. So
cookies is Mexican dirt weed with a facelift.
it's a
It's
great
the
point.
new, it's the new swag. It just looks prettier nowadays. You know what I
It's
mean?
swag in a designer bag, and they got people hype on these Mylars. The young hype boys. I see people with the fucking cookies, sweatshirts. Like it's as much of a clothing brand and it's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle brand more than it is a weed thing. Like our weed's pretty subpar and overpriced.
Yeah. Like I said, there's the overall quality of weed has greatly improved. You don't even see Mexican brickweed anymore. It's because in the place of Mexican brickweed, you have cookies, you have these large scale indoor cultivators, but it's not fucking good weed.
Well, it's like you're saying, it's their brand. They're just branding. So in every state, they just license their brand to whoever will run their crap because it's you got to run their strains too. So I remember they approached Mint and Canico. We turned them down because of all their demands. They wouldn't even put our name like grown by Mint and Canico. They weren't willing allowed to even give the grower the any recognition on the packaging anywhere, and that's why we turned them down. But and you had to grow their strains. You couldn't grow your strains, which yeah, that was not cool. Don't tell us what to grow. So that those are the two reasons we turned them down. But they'll just they go to the next grow and they accept. Happened to be in here in Michigan. I think it was Gage Cannabis that got the license and started producing for them. And yeah, they have a pretty bad rep in Detroit where they first opened.
That doesn't surprise me at all. And I definitely know from firsthand experience. I was in the process of being contracted as one of the growers here locally, and they were kind of like flip-flopping, like, do we do our own thing and grow our own strains and start our own farm, or do we just grow all the cookie strains? They're saying that we'll guarantee we're going to buy all the pounds you grow at X amount of dollars per pound. And so I think that for a lot of these growers, it is a simple option for them to just be like, yeah, I guess I'll take guaranteed sales of my product versus like, ebbs and flows. But a lot of this stuff, I joked with my wife the other day. It's like we were watching something, it was Griselda on Netflix about Griselda Blanco, the female cocaine dealer, smuggler, etc. And they did a handshake deal in the thing. And I was like, I actually love like the old black market ways of like there were handshake deals. And granted, like some of that unfortunately led to like murder and robberies and people getting fucked over. But like people mistake the fact that because we're in a legal industry now, that because it's on paper, that because you have contracts, that people are going to follow through with all of that.
Fuck no.
No, people will fuck you over legally. They'll make an LLC and just bankrupt it, and they'll take a bunch of money on from like we saw this in the California market. Like 50% of the brands have gone upside down, and in part because uh, there's people like Speedy Weedy who's now in Michigan. So look out for that motherfucker. I don't know the actual person's name, but allegedly, because they're being sued by a lot of different people, they would purchase a bunch of product and then basically not pay for it until they absolutely like last minute. And then when people started calling them on it or like suing them for it, they'd be like, all right, we owe you 65,000, we'll pay you 20 or 25 or 30, and we'll settle out of court or something like that. And it was just a shit show. And a bunch of these small brands got hit really hard. And yeah, people can fuck around and get names and licenses. They were illegally signing people up and using people's names and shit. Like there's Steezy's under a whole bunch of controversy right now as well. And it can get really shitty really fast if you, even in the legal market where everything's on paper, man, do handshake fucking deals. Trust the people you work with. Vet the people you work with so that you can actually trust them. When you shake their hand and you say, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and you're going to pay this price, or you're going to do X, Y, and Z, and I'll pay you this price, be a fucking person of your word and live by that because that's actually how I'm in a non-cannabis business, but every single one of my contracts is a non-contract. It's a handshake agreement with the families that I work with. And I can make that work in 2024 in my legal business. Some people might say, oh, that opens you up to this, and that. And it's like, I think that there's a lot of things that you can do to protect yourself. But yeah, I think that there's a beauty to actually like being a good person and working with good people or trying your best to be a consistent professional. Like do what you say you're going to do, just the bare fucking minimum. Show up at the time you say you're going to show up. Bring the amount of money you say you're going to bring. Like don't fucking bring guns to this. Don't bring defamation and slap lawsuits to this shit. Like some of these people try and ruin each other's reputations and drag each other through the mud and have these big Gage is one of them. Fucking Gage. I would stay so I wouldn't touch anything Gage, Gage Green Group, Gage, whatever. Gage from the start, the whole breeder, like Doug Pug, and like that whole entire it's such a mess, dude. Like if you've looked into like the people, like the drama, it makes me
Oh
sick.
yeah.
Like it's toxic. It's really fucked up. Like it drags me down. I don't even want to get into it because I don't want to bring that mess to this show. I know that there are people will start attacking us. Oh, Jack, you don't know this or that. It's like I've seen the fucking videos. I've followed them. I've watched where they started and whose genetics they started with and the relabeling and all the shit that goes on. And there's a reason I have my little page that follows a certain number of breeders and it's so small. There's 40 people on there and a couple of them are like me and like homies that are on the show. But like you really have to vet and go through because there's a lot of knockoff artists and scammers and schemers, and that's why I try to just focus on the good ones. Because if you focus on the bad ones, you'll spend all your time being just ranting and raving about the bullshit that's going on. And that could be said for every industry, but especially in ours, we're new and upcoming, and there's people that are we're probably nefarious in the illicit market that are going to try and be nefarious in the legal market. But there's good people. There were great people, Spartan groans of the world, caregivers that did this before there were laws for it and setups for it and things for it that would give product away for free in a time where it was worth way more than it is now. And we're connecting people with stuff that they wouldn't be connected to otherwise. So I think that there's something to not an unregulated market or, having a little bit of that freedom and doing what you think is right and just. Because if a law is unjust, then it's, not worth following, in my opinion. And so I think conscientious objection or, civil disobedience, whatever you have to do. Like Marbury versus Madison said, like, if it's against the Constitution, then it can't be a law. But that got overturned in like 2021. So how the fuck is that a thing? But anyway,
I just go by Russ's law, and that's just be a good human. Fuck whatever, all these fucking imaginary laws and things written down. Just be a good human.
I like the do no harm, take no shit kind of philosophy. Don't harm others, but like also don't be a fucking doormat. Because I at times just trying to be good and a nice person can be taken advantage of by certain types of people who will take advantage of it. And not to be saying it like I think there's a certain amount of life that should be dedicated to charitable work, whether it's, I don't think that you should have to go to a charity, but like doing work for free, whether that's answering DMs of people that are just starting growing. It's technically work. I'm taking time out of my day to share knowledge without any, repayment. But the payment for me was what I already got. I got the lessons from the OGs that I messaged back in the day and the forum posts that I read back in the day and the books and the videos, things that all the stuff, that content that I got, it's like I feel like I'm paying it forward. And so it doesn't feel like I need to make some DM a transaction like, oh, by the way, if you send me a $5 tip or something, then I'll answer all your questions. Like, no, it's like I'm gonna do my best just to keep on spreading the awareness and knowledge. But at the same time, it's I think that people should value their time. It is important, but at a certain time, you have to know when to say when. And certain people in life, all around, it's like there's lots of people that will unfortunately take advantage. And I think a lot of them got us to where we're at now with some of our unfortunate regulations and laws. And that's why I'm thankful for people like Brandon Rust and Spartan Grown who are here on this panel who've actually broken through that. Like I know it's not fun or comfortable to talk about politics sometimes, but activism for cannabis is something I think that we can all get behind. And in some stretch or another, you both have gone out, and I have in my personal life here,
I just
and so has my wife. We've all fought against what we feel are unjust laws. We've gotten our faces out there. We've spoken to politicians, council people, mayors, and state senators and things like that, so that we can get our voices heard. And even if they don't do exactly what we want, then we can start telling people, hey, they didn't listen. They're not listening, not just to me, but the will of the people. Look at the rolls. Like 70% of the people in my city voted for cannabis. And then they sat on their fucking hands. And guess what? A few of those council people got voted off and now a few new ones came in, and now they're actually setting up dispensaries because they're like, hey, we're missing out on multi-millions of dollars of revenue that the city right next door to us decided when all their people, 63% said yes, and they said, okay, we're going to listen to the 63% and we're going to start building. And they made millions of dollars in tax revenue, which is directly, I can see it in the city that it happened. I can see it. I drive around, I'm like, oh my God, it looks like a 3D rendering. Like everything is so nice and new. It almost feels a little bit uh like Bizarro World because it looks so new and so nice and so modern. I'm like, this is a little bit too fucking nice and modern in some places. Like, you got to make it a little more natural. Like, this looks like a 3D rendering. I don't feel like I'm in the world anymore. I feel like I'm in a fucking simulation or some shit. But at the same time, I used to go to that city 5, 10, 15 years ago before anything was legal there and before they were getting that tax revenue. And it was kind of the streets were had a lot more potholes. The paint on the streets was not as consistent. The sidewalks were more fucked up. So they've gone through and they've made the city a better place because of there's just no two ways about it. Cannabis just made it better for them. And so other cities were like, hey, don't fuck around and waste our opportunity. Let us fucking have access to this.
Yeah, just Michigan alone, the last year they did $3 billion in sales. $3 billion in sales. I mean, that's a lot of. Unfortunately, it's a lot of. I was just going to say a lot of jobs that support and everything, but yeah, unfortunately a lot of those jobs are getting minimum wage, and a lot of that money is getting funneled to the top players in the game. But it's still encouraging to know that that's the demand. I think lawmakers, or if you're talking to lawmakers, you show them that number, and like, it's a huge number. That's the demand. That's the demand that's out there, and it's still growing. Um, that number wasn't that big last year, right? And so it's got to top out somewhere, I imagine, but and slow down eventually. But even if it stayed the same and it was $3 billion in sales again next year, that's a significant amount of sales in any industry. So I'm proud to see that, and it shows that cannabis matters, man. And it's a big player.
Well, and 1% of 3 billion is a big number, but I know they're not taxing just 1% of cannabis. So
Oh no, the recreational side, which is the vast majority of those sales, is 16% sales tax. So the regular state sales tax of 6%, and then a 10% excise tax, or sin tax.
it's at least one half of California where I'm at. It's 32% tax. You buy $100 gram, you're spending $132 out the door.
Wow.
Yeah,
Ouch.
I say $100 gram, and people are like, what the fuck is he talking about? The example I was thinking of, my buddy bought this 710 Labs like Percy rosin, which is some fancy, really high end, whatever snobby rosin. I actually got that same sample for free. Funny enough, that shows you how the fucking market works. They're able to give away a free sample of $100 gram, to some Joe Schmo. It wasn't even to me, it was to my wife in that case. Both, and this was anyway, getting beside myself. But yeah, the taxes being high like that means that they get some money rolling in when you've got billions of dollars in sales, or hundreds of millions of dollars in sales. Like, that means that you have better schools, better parks, better, everything, fire
Yeah,
stations. Like,
we
it,
actually allocated the money where it was supposed to go.
if they did, that's the problem, is a lot of it gets funneled into like Spartan and others probably rightfully mentioned.
It goes into the sheriff's pocket, and they're like, "Sweet, we're all getting raises, we're getting bonuses, we're getting new cars."
We're getting tanks. We need more tanks so we can go do these inspections on these cannabis facilities. We're
I'll
fucking
say,
paying for that.
I used cannabis underage, but if we're gonna live in a world where we call it adult use, and if we accept that there's actual legitimate medical uses, I think that we should restrict and regulate it so that if you're under 18, you should have some medical use for it. Otherwise, you can get it in the regular market or whatever, like all of us went about doing it. But I do think a certain amount, like setting up sting operations where they're going to catch people selling fentanyl or other drugs, as well as like cannabis illicitly, that's a slap on the wrist. So like those people, they're not really arresting in California anymore. They get fines and shit. But they could actually legitimately stop, people funneling harder, worse drugs to younger kids, which I think is a net win potentially. But at the same time, like, even if like Spartan mentioned earlier, the people are getting minimum wage at these jobs. A lot of these people are getting minimum wage at their current job, and they're working at like a Best Buy or a McDonald's or whatever else. And not to say that there's any shame in working at a minimum wage job. I've worked several of them in my lifetime.
Bro, I'm not kidding. I've seen McDonald's jobs advertising on their signs for higher than what they're starting people at most dispensaries.
That's true. Well, and that's why like people don't realize this, but a lot of people that work at McDonald's end up like retiring millionaires if they just are smart with their money and like save it. They move up through the promotions. Like I was driving through the thing and the one guy's like, I won't get too into it, but this drive-through employee at McDonald's drives a Tesla, which that for a lot of people that's like not something that is financially achievable for them. And so that's something that this individual is able to achieve through working at McDonald's. And I know like a lot of places around here, like you're saying, it's more than minimum wage. I think our minimum wage is like 15 or $16 in California, and they're paying a lot of like In-N-Out was one I saw like starting at 20 and like managers are like 25 or 27 or something like that.
In and Out has always paid their people really, really well. When I think 2003 to about 2006, I had a friend who was a manager at an In and Out, and he did that while he's putting himself through college, and he was making great money. I mean, he was a manager, and I think he was making like $26 an hour.
Yeah, that was many
If
years
you
ago,
want
I'm imagining.
to, you do not have to have any responsibility working fast food.
There is certain like they run a tight ship there. Like if you look through, like it's an open kitchen and like they keep shit fucking rolling and they actually do a good job. Like I think the quality is
All
actually
these young kids that are like either in high school or fresh out of high school, college kids, you don't typically see like old, you'll never see like a 40-year-old dude in there working in there. It's, you know what I mean? All the people that work at these as like their starting jobs, they usually go on to like bigger and better things. My friend was working on his music career, which that's hard to do. So he actually ended up becoming a plumber after he went to school for music and got a degree. But yeah, he did that for a long time, man. In and Out was paying him well.
well, and there's no shame in the trades either. Plumbers make great money nowadays, and that's a
That
needed.
just sucks because if you're like super passionate about music and that's what you do, and you go to school and you spend money to do that, and then you can't find work doing what you love. It's I'm not nothing against doing any of the trades. Obviously, we need those, and that's the guys that do that are the country is indebted for all the infrastructure that they provide. So
They built the whole country for sure, and we are all very lucky that the great people, the electricians, the plumbers, and all the other
oh yeah,
tradespeople that built this country for sure. I have a great deal of respect for them. And even if you're just like a weekend warrior, like you could be a plumber Monday through Friday, or a lot of them are actually business owners. They own their own business and work probably a lot more than a lot of other people would. But um, if they do the Monday through Friday kind of thing and get it set up like that, they can play on the weekend and stuff like that. I think sometimes people like I was passionate about playing basketball, right? But I'm only 6 feet tall and I'm not the fastest in the world. I went through like some speed camps and to my credit, I will say other than like injuries, like I had some peers that I played like football with was I would have been better off in football. And like one of my buddies ended up getting drafted to the Green Bay Packers who sat behind me my whole life until I got injured. So like that probably would have been more my path. But like I loved basketball and I could have spent my whole life dedicated to basketball and trying to like get to the NBA and realize like, I'm just not fast enough or talented enough to do this. I'm not fucking I grew up near LeBron James. He played in one of the tournaments I grew in. I grew up playing in and I saw how much bigger and better he was than me and I was like, "Oh shit, it's an eye opener to see like there's levels to this shit." And in that particular case or circumstance, like I didn't have the natural talent. I have like great shit in my head, but I can't draw or paint worth a goddamn. So I know that I can't be an artist as much as I might like to be. And maybe I'll do some stuff for fun, like do a wine and painting thing with my wife and like do, paint a sunset or something like that. But I know it's not going to be my living. And even then, like a lot of great artists they're not recognized until they die. Like most artists aren't recognized until like after they're long gone, and then people like art historians celebrate them and do big exhibits, and then their shit goes for millions of dollars, but like
Jack, that's not why you
posthumously.
do art, though.
that's good.
You don't do art to be famous, man. That's not why you do art.
It's personal expression, I get it, but you have to make a living somehow. And the whole starving artist is
Yep.
a thing that I grew up literally seeing people try and make it and like struggling, starving in their van, like moving, like going city to city trying to do small shows and like it's a
Imagine
grind.
if you were like Van Gogh and then you got reincarnated and then you realize you were Van Gogh and you're just like, fuck, I got screwed and I'm getting screwed again.
Yep, and now everyone's, making money off of your work and trading it for unbelievable believable amounts of money. And it's funny,
You
art
do
is
know
actually
that
used to funnel money and launder money, like for a
the
lot of
whole
these like cartels and
industry,
shit.
yeah, the whole art
Well,
industry
that's
is
what art is,
used to
man.
launder money. It's one of the
That's what it
ways that
is.
really
Yeah.
wealthy people that's one of the ways they move around money
It's a way to
is art.
hide money too. It's like
Yeah, hide money, hide assets. It's you like art doesn't have as much value as people actually think it does. It's just that really, really wealthy people need to be able to manipulate.
it's worth whatever you think it's worth. It's worth whatever the next person will pay for it. So
Yeah.
it's like
Oh, look at this $400 million painting just depreciated $300 million. It looks like I'm not going to have to pay that $300 million tax.
you're right. Yeah, you could do
Yeah,
that with vehicles too.
you know what I mean?
No, you're right. You're right. You're 100% right. And like the smartest people end up not paying taxes if they, I shouldn't say the smartest, the wealthiest people don't pay taxes because they pay smart individuals that know the tax law that can jump through all those fucking loopholes and make it so that they don't have to pay anything. They buy more property. They sell a vehicle at a loss or something like that. You know, they sell stock at a loss. There's like something called like a wash sale. Like, right? I own a bunch of X stock and then I sell it because my accountant told me, oh, hey, that stock dipped down a little bit. So if you sell X amount of thousands of dollars of this, you take that as a loss on your taxes. And then you just have to wait 1 month and then you can just buy back in to the same exact stock. Like, granted, it moves a little bit throughout that month and it could go up or down, and there's some risk associated with that. But that's a pretty fucking easy way at the end of the year. You literally see it. Like there's pension funds that their year ends like I think it's at the end of October. So if you watch stocks, like a bunch of them will just fucking plummet for like a few weeks at like the end of October, and then they start fucking going right back up because then they have to redeploy this capital and start spending that money and buying those stocks up after their new basically January 1st capital year starts, and they start buying back all the shit. And it's like you see these articles that hype it up and hype it down. Oh, this company's not worth shit, or this company's worth X, it should be worth more. And there's so much manipulation that goes on with that. Like the media is really, there's a lot of bias and controls behind all this shit. And we won't go too deep into it. We're getting off the rails a bit here, but yeah, people should definitely look into a lot of that stuff because it does impact you ultimately. It impacts people's retirements and their savings and their ability to afford a home or things like that ultimately in the long term. So it can impact you. And it can also help you build a little bit of a safety net for yourself if you learn to invest and be smart with your money.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that's really lacking in public schools is money management, tax management, business management, understanding corporate business structures, LLC structures, understanding those things that can really help someone to be successful.
Well,
And
you know why?
the problem that well not having that is it eliminates a lot of opportunity because people who have more education on that end up having more opportunity financially and business, and they're usually more successful. I wish I would have learned about business and taxes and all that kind of stuff in high school. That would be something that I could have actually used as opposed to algebra, which I have never fucking used once in my
They
life.
don't want a nation of thinkers. They want a nation of workers. And if you're familiar with Rockefeller and the General Education Board and sort of the reason behind vocationalism and education and the schools going to a more progressive education, you'll realize
Think
that they don't want us to know about finances and balancing our checkbook and paying our taxes and all that stuff. They want us
they
to be
definitely don't want
inept.
us to learn about taxes because even income tax is, I don't think it's even constitutional, and it wasn't. I mean,
Sadly, there's a lot of unconstitutional shit that gets,
think about that. Think about
accepted as
income.
law.
We're taxing you if you okay. So if you want to live, you have to work. You can't not work, right? But if you want to work, we're gonna fucking take half your shit. That's fucking robbery. There's no way around it. It's fucking robbery, right? It's robbery. If somebody takes half your shit and says you're not even allowed, it's basically a form of slavery. They're enslaving you.
Then when you grow your own organic food, they want to come and take that from you.
Well, they
Yep.
say no taxation without representation,
Like
right?
they shut down all the raw milk farms and
I'm
like
seeing
under
that,
the
man.
fucking safety and all this shit. It's like
They're rating them, dude. They're rating raw organic farms. They're like rating it like a cannabis farm. Like this is
yeah.
definitely concerning to some extent. But I will say there's no taxation without representation, and at least in most of the states that I've been to, I've been all around the US. you can drive your vehicle around on a mostly well-paved road. And if you get into a car accident, you can call 911 and the ambulance is going to arrive and pick you up and take you to a hospital that will take care of you. And you might get a giant ass bill from the emergency room or whatever. We don't have a,
If you were to order a DoorDash, if let's say you're in Chicago and you're in the South Side and you ordered a DoorDash, and at the same time you reported an active home invasion, the DoorDash would definitely show up before the cops ever got there.
that's why you got to protect yourself and protect your own home. Don't let the government be responsible for protecting you and your family. I'll say that. But that being said, it is 5:45, and that is about the time where we let Spartan Grown get his final thoughts and shout outs in before he gets on going over to the Michigan Bros Grow Show in about 15 minutes.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks, Brandon. It's awesome talking with you guys. Um, Man, this topic we're on right now, we can go for another half hour at least on. But but I want to talk super quick about we launched yesterday at Grandmaster LEDs, two new lights. And the only reason I bring it up is it's on like super sale, never gonna go this low again kind of a deal for the next, well, about 24 hours. I think it ends on Sunday midnight Pacific Standard Time, maybe. But anyhow, it's the Tarantula Vulcan. No, the Tarantula Voyager, which is they're both spectrum tuning lights. It's just the difference is how many channels. So we have the Borg Evo, which is a 4-channel spectrum tuning light. So the 4 channels is like a warm white, then bright white, and then a 680 nanometer red, and then a far red. So all those could be controlled independently with a controller. And then the the Voyager is the one I'm kind of more excited about because it brings spectrum tuning to a more affordable reach, and they've really knocked it down the price even more for this sale. It's like $900 for a cover 5x5 spectrum tuning light, so that's pretty dope. It's got You can manually change the spectrum or dim those 2 channels on that. If you want to get the controller, that's going to be even better because then the controller you can really, and that's I think $200, and that's on sale actually. I think they marked that down like $50 or something for the weekend too. So that, and I just got one of those, and I really like that for the spectrum tuning because to tune your spectrum and then dim the light and keep that spectrum nearly impossible by just dimming it by hand. Makes it way easier with the controller. So I'll get off my little soapbox, but I'm gonna head over to the Michigan Bros Grow Show. I'll see everybody over there in about 15 minutes. Much love, everybody, and keep growing.
Awesome having you as always. And I think you were talking about that, and it might have even been before the show. And I could tell that you were genuinely excited about it. So it's not just like a shameless plug there. It's something you were actually like saying that it benefit you. So I'm happy to see that you're able to work with somebody that you're able to stand by the product and you enjoy it and you use it yourself personally. And yeah, so thank you so much for joining us. As always, a pleasure to have you. And never feel bad. You spend a few hours with us each week, so feel free to always plug whatever products and social medias or wherever you feel like directing the people.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Peace out, Spartan.
See you later.
It's just the two of us now, Brandon. We could talk about how shitty the education system is, or we could get back into the growing side of things a little bit. But I do think that there's a serious problem with our education system, unfortunately, and
Well,
that
the thing is, it's kind of hijacked by like educational companies. They're able to sell their curriculum, sell their ideas, and they're usually put together by these large companies that may or may not have different agendas. And but have you
I didn't
seen
even
the?
realize my wife is from Arizona. I'm from Ohio. We got
Yeah,
completely different education just based on that, right? And like that is something that is obvious until like, when you're living in that state, it's easy to think that like everybody got a similar education, at least about like the federal stuff or international stuff. But like I got taught so much Ohio state history, right? And there's like a lot of stuff to be passionate about and things like that. My wife actually loves the state where she's from, Arizona, and she knows a lot of factoids and things about that. But we get a pretty small amount of international education, and I think that the history is lacking, and it's very biased in a lot of ways. But like I said, each education is different, like a public school versus a private school, and some people even choose to homeschool, and I more and more respect people that do that. The one guy I know who was homeschooled was really normal, awesome person, well educated, awesome family. So it was something that I thought when I was younger, like, who would homeschool? Like, why would you want to homeschool or this or that? And I had a very fortunate privilege to go to a great public school and a school that had enough, funding that to provide decent quality teachers and services and things like that. But not everybody has the same level of access. Like, um, just looking at like the statistics, the amount of literacy, people not even being able to read, man. It's like I feel sometimes like short term upset. I'm like, why doesn't this person just Google that? Like they have the wherewithal to DM me a question, but like maybe their level of education, and this isn't trying to be demeaning to anybody, but I do know that with certain people, they're either misreading or not able to understand what they're reading. Their like education didn't get them to the point where their competency is high enough to take in. They listen to maybe podcasts or shows because it's easier for them to listen to this stuff than it is to go look it up and read it. It's easier for them to have us synthesize an article sometimes and break it down and make it more layman speak for your common person. And I'm thankful that we're able to, not to say that I'm fucking some super genius. I'm a fucking idiot over here. I make mistakes all the time and I'm fallible and my education level is not like extremely high. And that's not the thing that I think matters. I think that there's a lot of people with less education and intelligence is just like one metric and everybody's intelligent. There's a million different types of intelligence, right? They say don't measure a fish by its ability to climb a tree, right? Something like that. I think it's an Einstein quote. Everybody has their sort of different things that they're uniquely good at for the most part, if you get to know them. But yeah, I think that unfortunately, when it comes down to like scientific literacy, things that like Brandon, you've gotten more into later in your life, like the actual process of like how these nutrients are being uptaken by the plant, what assists that, what products might be available and usable to lessen the load of needing the conventional fertilizers. Like, I really think that it's cool that you're kind of on that cutting edge of,
Oh yeah.
for a long
I'm
time, we had,
actually out here in Chicago. I was with Dr. George earlier, and I've helped build out a farm out in Mississippi. And they just pulled their first harvest down recently. They're still getting $3,500 a pound out there. And they're already ahead of the game because they got on the Bokashi Earthworks program. So they're much better quality. They're gonna have a great brand. But I've been working with these people, and when I first met them, they were interested in investing into the company. At that point, I didn't need any investment. This was about 2 years ago. But I'm out here doing a $3 million raise so that way we can build out a factory to manufacture humates and the NutriGrow pots. So I think that this time next year we'll be in production, and this, we're the NutriGrow pot will sell billions of dollars, or we'll sell hundreds of millions of dollars worth of fertilizer, and it's essentially we're gonna try to grow this thing into a huge international company.
that's a really high bar to aim for, but I don't doubt you at all because I've seen you plan and execute on all of your other stuff. And this is just like the launching pad, I think, if you're looking at where your career is going and where it came from. So I'm excited to hear about that and see more from it because like if you speak it into existence, I believe that it's definitely I don't know if it's manifesting or actually, busting
It's
your ass. I think
have
it's
to
really
do
the
work.
busting your ass portion.
Well,
You've
it's like
done the
what is it?
research.
They call it spelling, right? You write it out, you take it from an ethereal realm. It may not be the physical thing that you desire, but it's in a physical form, and that's called a plan. And as long as you follow that plan, you write out a good enough plan and you follow through. It's like what do they say? 90% planning, 10% execution, or something like that.
Something like that. I mean, shit, I've had to make new goals and things because I had lists of goals and dreams and things that I wanted to do, and I accomplished fucking most of them. And so it's like now I think there's other things to live for, like making my wife's dreams come true and making my family and other people happy as well. But I'm very internally satisfied from a lot of the things that there's shit that I've accomplished that I never even thought would have been possible. Like when I was dreaming up all this shit, dream about it. It's just like really there's so much to life that
Yeah, I
you never
mean,
even know the
I
scope of how
oftentimes get
grand it can be.
scared about. I oftentimes scare myself about like how this is going to work, because it's such a huge play. It's such a huge, like, there's the potential to create massive global impact with what we're doing, because we're essentially changing the fertilizer game. I mean, this fertilizer is so advanced, not only because it's a better management of resource and energy. And a good example is 1 ton of urea. It takes 35 million BTUs of energy to produce that. Think about 35 million BTUs in terms of AC units. You get a better picture of how massive amount of energy that is just for 2,000 pounds of a 46% nitrogen that only has about 30% use efficiency. The humate fertilizer can be harvested from one single element, and then it has a 96% use efficiency. It only takes 900,000 BTUs for a complete fertilizer, NPK, secondary, and micronutrients. So the resource management and the energy management is exponentially better.
The thing is, like you're saying, there's some fear in expanding it out, but sometimes to get somewhere you've never been, you've got to do something you've never done. And in that case, it's like I'm sure you've been saying it out loud, but like the $3 million raise, it might seem crazy, but when you're considering like this is a multi-billion, potentially $1 trillion market, when you're talking about ag and fertilizers
And
worldwide,
that
and
Nutribullet pot is crazy, dude, because that's going to be in every Walmart, Home Depot, Ace, Lowe's. There is not going to be a single store that doesn't carry that product.
it makes sense for me from like I've seen the step change and evolution from like what used to be at the big box stores or the garden centers when I was younger, and then like Miracle Grow and things like that started to come around, and you see some other products, and like it's just like even like those I don't think they used to be available, but like the little peat shaped, the ones that don't have any nutrient in them, that
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people still buy to this day in little cells, like 6 packs, 12 packs, etc.,
Man.
that are just convenience, ease of use, simplicity, being able to mass market it. And then like with yours, like having a base amount of X, Y, and Z nutrient,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna get them off to the races in a way. Like that one plant that I saw, it was like one tiny little leaf, and it was like, several feet tall, and you just planted it into the ground in your backyard. It's like
Yep.
a lot of people want
And sand,
access to that.
and sand. The cool thing too is like when if you put 50,000 Nutrigrow pots in a hectare of land, you don't even need to fertilize. You just, that's 50 grams a cup. You just put, what is that, like 50,000 times 50? I can't even do the fucking math on my head. It's a fucking massive number of fucking grams of fucking fertilizer.
50,000 times 50 is 2,500,000.
Grams divided by 1,000, then you'll get the amount of kilos of fertilizer that you just applied.
2,500 kilos.
2,500 kilos. So we're talking about a ton and a half. No, a ton and a quarter.
It's a lot of fertilizer to apply, but it's definitely, I think, going to change how things are done. And I think that a lot of people are going to copy it. So I think that you might have some process patents or patents that George has or something like that, that you guys are going to be able to protect this at least for like the next 10 or 15 years or something like that.
Oh no, they can't do what we're doing because they don't have the humate technology. So what they're going to run into, and the reason why nobody's done this already, because it's such a simple idea, right? It's like, why didn't I think of that? The reason why it may have been thought of already but hasn't been implemented is because they can't stop the precipitation reactions that naturally occur between plant ions unless they're utilizing the technology that Dr. George has developed.
Interesting. Well, hey, that's the beauty of being an inventor of new technologies. Sometimes you get to benefit from having something that's not available to the rest of the public. I am certainly curious to see how long he'll have sort of exclusivity over this if it's ever discovered or looked into. Because I think if you make such a big splash on the market, other people are going to try and copy it, just like anything else. They want to reverse engineer and steal any good ideas and make them their own. But ultimately, that's for the future to decide for us. And with that being said, Brandon, we've got about 1 minute left. So if you want to give any final thoughts and shout outs before we get going.
Yep. If you guys want to go check out the website, you can use code GROWBIG still for 10% off your entire order, including things that are already on sale. We also dropped the Green Bodie, Top Dress of Edge, and Bloom line. And you should definitely go on there and check out the blog posts. There's so much cool stuff on there. There's everything from grow guides, there's things on tricantanol, there's things on secondary metabolites. There is a massive amount of information on our blog.
Great stuff. We'll definitely encourage everybody out there to check that out and get some Bokashi Earthworks products while you're at it, because I use a bunch of them and they're all really fire and work great in my garden. And they're much better priced than a lot of the other places that I've gone. And I'm not just saying that because Brandon's my homie and he's on the show. I actually do use them, and I use a handful of other things, but a lot of it does come from Brandon's supply. So I'm very thankful for him and his products and all the information that you're putting out there. Those blog posts do take time and effort, and a lot of people are looking for good information. So check out people like Brandon. You see him doing it, crushing it at so many different scales, helping so many different people all across the globe, and having success in his own garden, both home grows and commercial
I
grows and
love
things like
to
that.
see all the growers just winning, man. I love to see all these great plants being grown and people being stoked on their gardens. It makes me happy.
We're the minority, man. We're such a tiny fraction of the world. Like growers, like I might be underestimating, but I would say there's less than 10,000 people on the planet that grow cannabis, like individually. They might work at a grow or something like that. Maybe more. Maybe the numbers are higher. I'd have to look into it, but it's such a small percent. Like I meet hundreds, thousands of smokers who've never grown before. We're such a tiny fraction, dude. We're so small, and like the infighting that happens, it just
There's
sometimes
more
makes
than
me sad.
10,000 because I got 40,000 people following me, and most of those people grow weed.
That could be true. I don't know.
There's
I follow,
probably a good amount, dude. I bet you there's probably in the US probably like 200,000 people that are fucking growing.
and you're probably right because the numbers, there's just 8 billion people or whatever. But like I made a backup account at least like on Instagram just to follow more pages. I got to 7,500 on my main page, and I started following, and I'm at like maybe 1 or 2,000 on my thing, and I follow every single grower that I find. And there's other ones I like went on Twitter, and I've even tried to go through Facebook, but Facebook and Instagram have just less and less. I don't like them for a lot of the reasons that people obviously know. But yeah, it's
LinkedIn
there
is surprisingly cannabis friendly.
there's I'll just say like for every 100 smokers, I would bet there's one grower. Like I think it's that low of a ratio. I think it's 1%. And I could be wrong, but we're in a obviously biased situation. We are around growers all the time. But even if it's 200,000, like 200,000 out of, you know, 8 billion or 300 million in the US plus, 350 million, it's just there's shockingly few of us. And we do have to keep growing. We have to keep teaching more people, and we have to keep popping seeds. We have to keep on finding new interesting things because like it gets boring otherwise, and it'll disappear. Like in I think it would take a huge catastrophe for cannabis to disappear off the face of the planet, but you know, there are some crazy ass campaigns that go down, and cultures shift. And at this point, I think so much of the majority, I think like 40% of the US population or something like that is either tried or currently smoke, depending on the state. But it's just gotten huge. And we're rambling on a little bit over into the Michigan Bros Grow Show. So make sure to go check over the Michigan Bros Grow Show on Instagram or YouTube, I should say, at Jack Greenstock. You can find me on Instagram. Jack_Greenstock is my account on X.com and my backup account on Instagram. If you want to email me, jackgreenstock47@gmail.com. And my website, you can even message me through the website, 50 strains, strains.com, like 50 strains of green, which is my book, which is currently on sale 24% off for 2024, as well as all my seeds. Everything that's available for sale in the US is 24% off. And I even have 3 packs. So I think that's like about $30 right now. If you're trying to get a little 3 pack of the Velvet Punch F3, those are available. I got 3 packs, 5 packs, and 11 packs on the website. So if you've been trying to get some Velvet Punch from me and you're in the USA, check that out. 24% off right now. But with all that being said, head on over to the Michigan Bros Grow Show and go hang out with Spartan Grown and the rest of the great crew over there. And we will see you all next week. Keep on growing, grows love. And for all the panelists who weren't able to make it this week, we'll catch you next time.
Later, dude.